WBEE HD2 and W239BF Rochester. The sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
Always live on the free Odyssey app.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
We're finally into draft week.
And let's go Buffalo!
Mike Danger.
Look, I know I'm 12 years old, Gino. I have a very juvenile sense of humor. Farts are and will always be hilarious to me.
Gene Battaglia.
25% of the Buffalo Bills are for sale. Danger, you want to put in a bid here, bud?
You've got the NFL draft, the NBA playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Let's go! Isak Roseyan makes it back-to-back just like that, and the Amherst lead it once more. It's 3-2.
The Rochester Amherst clinched the 2 seed in the North Division. They'll be facing off against Syracuse in the best-of-5 series.
Amherst Crunch, Friday at 7. Game 1.
Playoffs?
Oh yeah, folks.
It really hit me. I didn't know it was coming back that far.
Scotty Scheffler, that's 4 victories in his last 5 starts and 10 over the last 26 months.
The Nighthawks also secured a spot in the NLL playoffs.
95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
Hey, good afternoon to you as we welcome you on into Rochester's only local sports talk show. It's the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia. Appreciate you listening at 95.7 FM, AM 950. We're in the free-to-download Odyssey app when you search out The Fan Rochester. We've got a YouTube channel at The Fan Rochester. We're streaming on Twitch at The Fan Rochester. You can even get us on your smart device when you ask it to play. 95.7 The Fan. I'm Danger. That's Battaglia.
How are you, buddy? Best week of the sports calendar is one of them.
It's a great week ahead, a great weekend that was. I mean, look, the weather wasn't exactly cooperative. It could certainly be nicer for the end of April, but I'm not letting it deter me anymore, Gino. I've turned the corner. I'm in full-blown activation mode. There was no stopping me when I got home on Friday. I didn't stop. I was constant. We were out in the rain on Friday morning doing our thing for our one thing, Earth Day volunteering thing at High Falls.
Yeah.
We're out there weeding and pulling, trimming shrubs and pulling weeds, and it's raining on us. And if you were here on Friday, you remember Gino got to go home, take a shower, clean up afterwards. I was just a filthy mess. I was like Pigpen from Peanuts. I got a dust cloud all around me. I got home and I didn't stop. I'm like, I'm getting on the lawnmower. I don't care that it rained all day. It was a sloppy slog. Ooh. It doesn't matter. I got the mow in. I took your advice. I went highest level on the deck because I thought I was going to need to go back there with a machete.
Yeah.
Got that done. And then I'm like, I'm not going to stop. Let's get to the garage. Started working the garage Saturday morning. Power washer. Is there anything more satisfying?
Oh, we've been over
the
this.
Power washer.
Wash, yeah.
When you do a good power washing and it gets everything up and out, oh, fantastic. Screens up on Saturday in the garage. So now I'm like, all right, now all I got to do is just finish cleaning this garage floor, and I'm set. I'll be watching Stanley Cup playoff hockey by the time the weekend is up. We had a nice time Saturday night. We saw our friends from the B Morning Coffee Club at the Ronald McDonald House Gala at the convention center, and then Sunday morning I got up and went right at it.
Wow. So this was full 72 hours of, if you start here with our volunteer project on Friday, everything.
Yeah, I've got momentum now. Momentum is back. Momentum engaged.
I noticed you didn't say you were tuning in to hear lacrosse. For Greg and everybody else that wrote in said, yeah, Gene, you're doing a hell of a job with this considering.
Oh, I listened. It was cold on Saturday, bud.
The women won 19-6.
Uh-huh.
The men won 23-1.
Wow. And you're there to call all that action.
But listen anyways.
And you're out there freezing your couillons off.
Yeah. For the women, I'm like, we had a Yahtzee call. And I let everybody in on the secret here. So in Section 5 lacrosse, as well as Division 3 women's lacrosse, when you get to a certain goal number, the running clock. The running clock, it should be, everybody that has youth sports, by the way, you want the kids to have a little fun, but when they get a little older, right? Mercy rule, everything. You're secretly pulling for that. So the code
especially on a day like Saturday. It was cold on Saturday.
Yes. So the code is whenever we get the running clock, I call it Yahtzee.
Yeah.
Something that, you would see in a Ron Burgundy movie. Like, let's come up with something cheesy, and just kind of like the wink, wink, nod, nod. We had the Yahtzee call for the women, but they don't do that for the men.
Oh.
But they did this. It was such a lopsided game. They shortened the halftime. Like, wait a second. Why are there only 5 minutes up on the clock? I'm like, Tim, we got to bring it back right now. But 5 minute halftime.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was
kind of knew which direction that game was going.
Right.
Got you out of there though. Yeah. Even last night. I mean, I'm you know me, Mr. Delayed Gratification. I get all this work done. I'm out in the garage with the power washer on a cold Saturday. I can see my breath as I'm cleaning out the garage. I wake up Sunday. I'm scrubbing the floor. I'm getting this thing looking nice and neat and ready for the rest of the season. The screens are up, and all I'm saying to myself is, I'm going to watch Stanley Cup playoff hockey tonight. I'm going to watch, and I don't have all the lawn furniture in the garage yet, so I just grab a folding chair. I grab one of our outdoor chairs, and I plop myself down, and it's just me, my chair, and my projector watching playoff hockey, and I am freezing, dude. I am cold out there last night, and I'm trying to get my family in on it. I'm like, come on, let's go. Let's not let the weather deter us from doing fun stuff. Let's get out of the house. Let's get out of the house and go to the garage. It's screened in, and I got this. They thought I was a psycho. They thought I was crazy.
Yeah, I would have gone down to the man cave. I don't think that yesterday. You feel satisfied, but
yeah, I made it 2/3 of the way through the Avs Jets game, and then I'm like, all right, third period, I'll watch in the cave. It was probably a sad scene.
Jeez, like if you couldn't make it through 3 periods of that game outdoors, no game is going to keep you going. That game was A+ last night.
Fantastic. I mean, just for anybody that questions why I and others say that the Stanley Cup playoffs are the best product in sport, like it's the best postseason in all of sport, watch that game from last night between the Avs and the Jets. It was back and forth. It was entertaining. It was quick. It's almost like in again, if you're fed a steady diet of Sabres hockey and you watch something like that, you're like, oh my God, I forgot. This is what hockey is supposed to look like. Just ridiculous. And I kind of feel for the Avs. You got Hellebuck on a bad game and you still couldn't get over. You got Gorgiev is going to be an issue for the Avs if they want to advance. We've got a great show lined up for you this afternoon here in the Sports Bar. It's draft week. I mean, we could talk about the local playoff berths for the Amherst. We could talk about the local playoff berths for the Nighthawks. That's exciting, but it's also draft week.
Yeah, and by the way, we're out Thursday and Friday. Thursday, our annual draft show. Where else? Three Heads Brewing, going to be a lot of fun out there. We'll tell you more details about that. And as well as Friday, we will be out this year at the Taproom Bill Gray's out in Shiloh. So make plans to join us at one or maybe both of our live events. So that means it's a short week for us here in the studio, but we will certainly be talking a lot of draft this week. Our buddy Chris Trapasso, CBS Sports. I feel like we knew Chris way back when. He is completely blown up. CBSSports.com. We can read his latest mock. He has the Bills trading up here for a wide receiver. We'll get Chris's thoughts not only on the Bills wide receivers, which one may be the best fit in this Buffalo offense. What's the perfect scenario? What if the Bills went defense and stayed put at 28? Who would be the best option? And how many quarterbacks may go? A lot of questions for Chris Trapasso coming up in the 4 o'clock hour.
Yeah, and later on this hour, 13 Wham Sports Director, BuffaloPlus.com, Mike Catalana will share his thoughts on the Bills and their needs here coming up on Thursday.
I also value Mike's opinion for where things are going, and it feels like there's a little bit of a story here, and we could talk about this, like in regards to, wait a second, Terry Pegula is putting up a quarter of the franchise for sale. What does this mean? Who may that be? What are the possibilities, the outcomes of the story? Maybe it's nothing, maybe it's something, but I'm curious to get Mike's thoughts here. Of course, we'll get his thoughts on what he'd like to see the Buffalo Bills do coming up on Thursday night, as well as Friday and Saturday. Mike Catalana, Buffalo Plus 13 Wham coming up.
And you mentioned Three Heads, where we'll be on Thursday. Should also mention that Three Heads Brewing has Rochester's largest patio now open for the season. You can enjoy their Melon Head Watermelon Sour and all the other fine beers. You just grab delicious wood-fire pizza there from Freddy's as well. We'll be there Thursday, and then the Taproom at Bill Gray's on Friday for our draft specials Thursday and Friday this week, days 1 and 2 of the NFL Draft.
We can share a cold one and maybe a win or two.
You can join us at 866-4FAN, 585-866-4326. You can also write to us on Elon's Twitter. That's X at the Fan Rochester.
The table is set, and as you mentioned, just before we get into the Bills talk here, a little hat tip to both of their local teams. I mean, the Nighthawks went from playing in Grand Rapids or St. Louis or somewhere else to, no, that's not true. Oh, by the way, there's only a 3% chance they would make the postseason. And literally everything that needed to happen happened for the Amherst. That's a win on Friday, a win on Sunday, wins by San Diego, Toronto, and New York, who's going to be in Ottawa. It all happened.
Yeah, everything broke their way. And from what we understand, a real electric atmosphere yesterday at the arena with everything on the line. And the Nighthawks didn't disappoint. They get the postseason berth. They're in the postseason for the second consecutive season, and they'll match up against Toronto this weekend.
Yeah, and I'm totally fine with the Amherst as a 2 seed. Gosh, that was a nice little game they had yesterday, winning in Utica and Syracuse losing to Utica Saturday night. The Amherst will get the home ice against the Crunch. This is the series danger. I remember this. You want to say the NBA drags things up?
No.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Like, if this goes 5 games, that's it. 15 days, calendar days.
Yeah, I was going to say it's just over 2 weeks, 2 full weeks. Well, let's see. I mean, this has been the rivalry that we've had circled all season long. And when we talk tomorrow to Amherst head coach Seth Thappert, I'm sure he'll tell us a lot of what we've already heard about the Syracuse Crunch.
Well, they're heavy, and we got to make sure that we're not, sitting in the box and all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not going to be an easy task for the Amherst here in technically the second round. We'll call it the opening round for the Amherst, with that getting underway Friday night at Blue Cross Arena.
Yeah, Cleveland got 6 of 6 points, so they're the top seed. I'm saying this honestly. I don't think it matters where the 1 or the 2 in this division, because Cleveland's going to have their hands full with whoever wins that Toronto-Belleville situation. So May is going to be hopping here in Rochester with the Amherst.
Back to the Buffalo Bills, because one of our regulars, Chris, in South Central Kentucky. I'm with Gene Battaglia. I want to know what the icon, Mike Catalana, thoughts are on Pegula, what he's doing by selling a quarter share of the Bills, and if it counts towards someone's PSL. Gene, I don't know specifically what your take on this is, because I think it could be a variety of different things. But from where I stand, I feel like if you're Terry Pegula, this is one of two things. You're either trying to cover the cost of how much more the stadium is going to cost than you thought it was going to cost, or, hear me out on this, given the value of an NFL team in 2024, Terry Pegula, by asking somebody to buy a quarter share, is almost flush with what he paid for the Buffalo Bills originally.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes the story fascinating, because we really don't know the motive behind it, and I will listen to that. I would also point out this, and when this story broke up on Friday, like, okay, that's great, that's good. He needs, like, whatever he's going to use that cash for, he's in a different position. Name me things in the United States today that you're guaranteed a return on investment. Go.
NFL team.
So what you're selling the 25% for now, what will the value of that 25% be in 10 years from now?
Right.
If you really want to set up generational wealth, this isn't something you're doing. This isn't something that you would... You see what I'm saying? It's like the person you're also bringing in, that's a whole other angle here. You would assume this is a silent partner. There are plenty of silent partners around the NFL. You don't know who they are. Tom Brady wants to be a silent partner, but he's going to be front-facing. Is this going to be somebody that we're going to learn a little bit more about, or is it just some venture capitalist that's just going to park it?
And I don't know what the exact rules are for allowing venture capitalists, or who gets a seat at that table. I mean, the NFL does have a pretty powerful. I mean, Brady wants to be. He's not yet, right? He still isn't a part owner of the Raiders.
Now, why would that be? I think he still wants to play.
Well, maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe the owners are just like, I don't know about that guy that's going to be calling games. He's in the media.
Yeah.
Are we sure he's not going to come back? Right. Like, there's probably a lot of reasons why that hasn't yet been approved. But if you're somebody who has the wealth and has the interest in investing in an NFL team, Yeah, a quarter of the Buffalo Bills might run you as much as $1.5 billion. What did the Pagulas pay? 1.7, something like that?
It was like 1.2.
1.2?
Yeah, I think that was it. I mean, think about the return on investment there. If I don't think the Bills would be valued at $4 billion, like whatever these, but you could
if an NFL team is $6 billion, let's just make it a round number and say it's $6 billion. What's a quarter of that? Is it 1.
Yeah, it would be 1.5.
1.5. Right.
I went to Fordham.
Yes. So, well, I've got a 12th grade education, barely. So yes, 1.5 billion. If it was if the Bills are valued at $6 billion, and I think if the Bills went on sale, if the Pagulas said we're out, you could get $6 billion for the Buffalo Bills, knowing that you have a new stadium being built, everything that's going on.
Knowing what franchises go for, I don't know if you would get 6. Washington goes for that because that's the market. That's what you can charge for certain things. Still, the market size does matter a little bit.
I think you could get 6.
There's another point to this I want to bring up, and that is, how did the stadium get built? Well, that's your tax dollars, folks, and that's also Erie County's tax dollars. But the Pagulas were putting in their share here, and their share was going to be recouped from the PSLs. And we've talked about the PSLs, but this is more speculation and maybe an anecdote. But follow me, Danger. I know of one Rochester business, season tickets, and they made the decision. And their employees, when they find out, are not going to be too happy here. And I'm not going to disclose who it is, but you just have to trust me on this one. PSL cost $15,000 per seat. 4 seats. Okay. Where are you going to come up with $60,000 in the budget? They made the decision to go away. And I understand any business that says, we want this team here. We can't afford this. There's going to be a lot of individuals, but it's the corporate sponsorship that have to make these decisions. So is part of this in case this falls flat? Because this is so secret, this whole process. And really, you could say it's none of our business. I would say, no, that's our tax dollars. It's sure as hell is our business what's going on with that. So how are PSL sales going? How?
Are we a walk-up town? Are people going to wait and hope that the price comes down?
Well, we're trained with that with the weather. I think I've learned that through 98 PXY Summer Jam and certain things like that. The weather kind of dictates that, but do we kind of carry that over to...
I mean, if you're waiting for there to be a discount for the PSLs, keep waiting. I don't think they're going to do that. And yeah, maybe that is part of it. I also think that the project of building the stadium, you might have over $500,000 $500 million, I should say, $600 million in overages as far as what it might actually cost when it's all said and done. The original project, $1.4 billion, and now rumblings that it could be a $2 billion project.
Shocking overages.
You knew it.
Yeah,
you knew it was going to happen. So that money, the Bills are on the hook for. That overage is something that the Bills and the Pagulas are on the hook for. And of course, they're going to try and find a way to offset that cost without it coming directly from their bank account. Look back to when the stadium talks originally started. It was a quote that Kim Pegula made that essentially, I think, I'm going to paraphrase, but it was something to the effect of, we don't just have, we can't just write a check for $1.4 billion. And you hear that and you're like, well, sure you can. You're a billionaire.
Yeah.
And the reality is, yeah, they're a billionaire, but they don't necessarily have that kind of cash laying around. Their money is invested. Their money is tied up. And if you invest and if you have your money saved in different places, you know that if you're trying to evade taxes, if you're trying to avoid taxes, there are ways you can do that through investing, your 401k, et cetera, et cetera. But you're also penalized like crazy if you try to touch that money. And I wonder how much of the Pegula's investments is tied up in a way that it wouldn't, the juice wouldn't be worth the squeeze because of how poorly or how much they would get taxed for trying to free up some of their cash.
Yeah, we've all been there, Danger. Like, hey, I want to buy this house. Okay, we have to put down every dollar we can. And do I want to take that penalty? Yeah, they don't make things easy anywhere, in particular this state.
And so if you're the Pagulas, again, I think what this really is about is less about, are they selling the team? They're not selling the team. This might be the first time you see, or the first time you see other owners or the NFL actually welcome in a private equity fund as a partner. Most owners don't do that. They own it outright. But maybe this is an instance where the NFL allows those kind of investments to happen. They haven't really changed those rules. But I think one way or the other, Terry Pegula is going to get the money he wants for that quarter share of the team to either offset the cost of the stadium overages or recoup the money that he invested originally in buying the team for $1.7 billion or whatever it was when he first purchased the team. It was 1.7, right? That feels like the number.
Yeah.
Mike Catalana, 13 Wham Sports and BuffaloPlus.com. joins us next. We'll talk a little bit more about this specifically, and we'll get into the Bills and Thursday's NFL draft.
I found that quote from Kim Pegula. This is 2018 from the Buffalo News. I don't even know if we can get there. I know fans in Buffalo don't want higher ticket prices. They don't want PSL.
She's right.
The state of New York doesn't want to give you any money. The city doesn't. We don't have $1.5 billion sitting around.
Right. I mean, they do, but it's not sitting around.
It's tied up.
It's tied up. And if you want to access that money, they're not going to give that money back to the government. No way. Would anybody want to? You know, there's a time and a place to access that money, and building a stadium is not what they would deem an appropriate time nor place. So, yeah, I remember that quote, and that makes me wonder if that's what this is all about. I think it is. Well, let's see what Catalana has to say. He joins us next. You're welcome to join us anytime this afternoon on the Sports Bar. 585-866-4FAN is our phone number. 866-4326.
You're listening to Straight up with no chaser. You're in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Draft week in the Sports Bar. Looking forward to Thursday. Looking forward to this weekend. See what comes out of it for the Buffalo Bills. And we'll talk plenty of NFL draft with our next guest, 13 Wham Sports Director and BuffaloPlus.com's Mike Catalana stopping by the Sports Bar. Mike, before we get into deep into the weeds here with the Bills, their needs, and what they might do come this weekend, we got to talk about this story out of Buffalo with the Pagulas putting up 25%, up to 25% or more, around 25% of the Buffalo Bills. What do you think this is all about?
You know, I wish I could do that. I wish I could. It's basically a home equity loan you don't have to pay back. Mm-hmm. And then when your house is worth more, you just sell it, and they get a little piece of it, and you get more. Well, right now they're looking into it. They don't have it done yet. They haven't. Obviously, they don't have minority, owners. But I think you're going to see more and more of this in the NFL. If I was the Pagulas, I'd be doing it. They're on the hook for the extra money on the stadium overruns. I think they know it's going to happen. And maybe it is somebody who comes in at this point, and eventually, depending on what happens with the Pagula family, if it's somebody who wants to buy the team, that it's an easier transition. Doesn't surprise me. And look at the value of the franchise. What are they saying now? The Bills could be up to like $4 billion, and they bought them for 1.35 or whatever it ended up being. The money is silly money. And now they can basically, think about what they can do. They can get somebody to give them close to $1 billion for 25% of the team, maintain control, take care of all their cost overruns, and maybe it's at some point a future owner of the team. So it doesn't surprise me. Like I said, the whole ownership model could be changing eventually in the NFL as the prices keep going up and up. But it really doesn't surprise me that they're looking to do this.
Yeah, for whatever reason, Pagula's looking maybe to get a little more liquid here, as they say, Mike, because we did have the report from Tim Graham after there were some things online saying, oh my gosh, everything's for sale. And okay, he said no, but if somebody wanted the Nighthawks, they could have the Nighthawks. How would you kind of take this here for the future of the Nighthawks in Rochester, Mike?
It's kind of a strange situation. They sort of did it. I think Tim alluded to this in his article as sort of a favor to the league. They already own the Bandits, and it's an odd circumstance, you've seen where they're not going to be running the Blue Cross Arena anymore. Honestly, in the big picture for the Pagulas, not disrespectful to the Nighthawks, but they are pretty far down the list for them. So, if the franchise was going to stay in Rochester and get an owner for here, that would be great. We don't know what the future is going to be for the franchise. Obviously, they just clinched a playoff spot and love to see them do well this year. But I think it does put the franchise's future pretty much in jeopardy, at least in Rochester, with obviously a potential change in ownership and maybe a change in location.
Look, we're going to go deeper down the rabbit hole than we probably can here, but I just think to lose that organization again, I would hate to see it, especially given what they've been able to build here from their expansion days. In order to keep it in Rochester, is it a prerequisite that you have to have somebody in our area who has a bond with this team or just a bond with Rochester? Because when the Pagulas bought this team, it sure felt like and sounded like they were doing this almost out of charity.
Yeah. I don't know if you necessarily have to have somebody from here because you have an arena to play in, you have a fan base, you have a history with the franchise. If somebody wants to get into the league, there's worse places you can be than Rochester with the Nighthawks, right? So I don't know. Honestly, I would say I think there's reason to be concerned based on the things I've heard about their future, but I don't think necessarily it has to be a local owner to do it because it's a viable place to have an NL franchise or to have the Nighthawks as a franchise, and we'll just see where it goes from here. But in terms of, look, when you're the Pagulas and you're building a stadium, you have the Bills. Right now you have the Sabres and the Amerks. I just think, and already having the Bandits, I think the priority just drops when it comes to the Nighthawks.
We're talking to 13 Wham's Mike Catalana. As Mike, we've read the mocks, we've done the mocks, we've kind of absorbed everything. What's the likelihood that Brandon Beane actually may get a receiver and just sit there and let the draft, as they say, come to him at 28?
His history shows he's not sitting there. I just don't think he is. I think if he's got somebody in his mind, he's got to work out a deal to move up. I like him trying to get Brian Thomas. I think he'd be a great fit for them. You know, it's easy to say sit there and wait and then take the guy. But look, I was up there the other day when he said we don't have a glaring hole at wide receiver.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Who are we kidding?
Yeah.
I mean, look at who they have right now. I mean, okay, I like Curtis Samuel as a player. I think he'll be better with a very good quarterback. Doesn't mean he's going to be a star, but he'll be better. I think he can do a lot of things. Khalil Shakir has become a solid player that you hope has a bigger future. But we sat and waited for Gabe Davis to be that guy to move up the ranks, and he never did. And that doesn't mean Shakir's not going to move up. I'm saying is he hasn't been put in that position. Who else do you have? Who do you have? Mac Hollins? Like, there's no one there. I mean, there just isn't. So they are in desperate need. I think they need to draft at least one, if not two, and maybe sign another veteran. I mean, they are. Let me ask you guys this. Where are they right now in terms of wide receiver rooms? And I know everybody loves Kincaid as a tight end, and I think he can be really good.
Yeah.
But strictly wide receiver, I think they're certainly bottom third in the NFL without any question, right?
Yeah. I think, though, here's the counterpoint to that, and I'm not saying that I think they're not going to go wide receiver in the first round. It feels like that's what they would do, and it feels like Brandon Beane would be aggressive and go up and get it. That's what history has shown. But he did invest a first rounder in a pass catcher last year in Dalton Kincaid, and you could look at that wide receiver room. You could also look at your pass rushers and your edge rushers and say, we have a pretty glaring need here as well, unless we really think that A.J. Epineza is going to become this like constant, or we're going to get something out of Von Miller at this stage of his career. Is there a case to be made for taking a beast of a pass rusher that might be available to you there in round one?
Yeah. Well, look, I guess there's a case to be made if you believe you can do something in the second round at wide receiver. But what I'm saying is, look, you can say this. You have Greg Rousseau. You have Ed Oliver in the middle. You do have A.J. Epinesa, who has at least been a decent player for him. And their hope is that, it's a big hope, but that Von Miller comes back to some level. Plus, I think you're back on the veteran train looking for another player. It always happens after the draft. Teams either decide to move on from players. Their players become free agents on the defensive line. Someone will be out there. I think at wide receiver, it's glaring. And if you're sitting there, say you pick, let's just say you take, Chop Robinson, I don't know, whoever you want to say as your defensive end, because you need one. Well, it's also admitting, we've talked about this, the amount of resources that Beane has used at defensive end is almost alarming that you're still in that spot looking for one in this draft. And maybe you take one, later. But are you waiting until 60 to get a wide receiver? And it's easy to say, the draft is deep. It's not that deep. I mean, you are – honestly, we always try to label the wide receivers as the 1, 2, and the 3. And sometimes it's pretty easy to figure that out. You need a 1 and maybe a 2 with this roster. The way I look at it is you're either hoping Curtis Samuel advances or Shakir advances. But, you look at it. Curtis Samuel has more catches than the rest of the wide receiver room put together, and Curtis Samuel isn't even among the top 50 active players in catches or yards. So, Stephon Diggs had 160 targets. Everybody likes to rip on Diggs now because he's gone. But, I mean, if Stephon Diggs was coming to the Bills now, he's obviously still your unquestioned number one receiver, at least for this year. So, I think there's a need at defensive end, but, man, there is a much bigger need at the moment to wide receiver.
Mike Hanlon, 13 Wham Buffalo Plus is our guest. I know one guy who might want a wide receiver, and coming from the media talks last Thursday, Mike, I had never heard the story that Josh Allen had actually texted Brandon Beane and said, hey, Kincaid's the guy I want, and ends up with Kincaid, and I kind of like that, Mike. I mean, that to me is also a storyline here that Josh Allen, how much more can he take? Can he be as a leader on this team and be a little more assertive? And if he's going to, text his GM, on draft night, take this or that wide receiver, I'm totally fine with that.
I think the way that worked out is Bean said, this is a guy we're interested in. He looked at some Dalton Kincaid and then said, Dalton Kincaid's the guy to pick. I mean, he even admitted, like, hey, he's not sitting in meetings with guys and running through what they know about the offense and all. Josh is going to have an opinion. But to your point of wanting help, I mean, come on. This is why I asked Bean at the news conference, what was Josh's reaction? You can say what you want that Josh isn't in on all these receivers and knows exactly what they're like. But he certainly knew what Diggs was like. And Bean's answer to me was, I'm going to keep that between me and Josh. I don't think he was pounding the table saying you got to keep Diggs. But there's one thing to say in March, we're trading Stephon Diggs. Okay, good. He's out. We're going to change. But that's with the presumption that you're going to fix it. You're going to add players. And I think, hopefully, the conversations with Josh Allen were about the plan to fix it and to be aggressive in getting help for him at the wide receiver position. So, yes, I think he has some ideas, but I think I think Allen is going to have the confidence that Bean's going to do what he told him. He doesn't have to run it by Josh and say, do you care if we do this? But I think when he tells him we're trading Diggs, he also tells him we have a plan to go get you help. And that's what I think he's going to expect him to do.
And, Mike, with what we heard from Allen last week, the first time we heard from him since the Diggs trade, do you get the sense like I do that now with Diggs no longer in the locker room that this is Josh Allen's the alpha, he's the leader, he's the vocal guy? And with that, do you think we'll see and maybe it's not in his character, but man, I wish I would the word I use is mattable. I just want to see Josh Allen maybe get a little mattable. Not the antics that we saw with Diggs, but just a little bit more in guys' faces when they clearly screw something up.
I love that you said that. And I used to think, like, Josh is an alpha, but he's not that alpha. He's not the Tom Brady alpha or Aaron Rodgers alpha, that kind of guy who's yelling at guys, and maybe even not Rodgers as much, but sort of has that vibe to him. But for whatever reason, I always felt like Allen wanted to make Diggs happy. Allen wanted Diggs' approval. I know that sounds like I'm psychoanalyzing, but I'm just talking about just the way they played and 160 targets or whatever it was last year. Like, we're going to keep, and I do think this frees Josh up. Now, it's great to be freed up, but you still need guys that'll make plays. It's nice to say, okay, we're moving on from Diggs, and it's going to be different. But to your point, I also want to see him on the guy on the sidelines when he runs the wrong route or in practice or wherever it is. Like, they need to be accountable to him. Well, he doesn't have to be an ass to do this, but the players need to be accountable to him. And I think there's an element of Josh that's going to come out this year. I hope that's what it is. I hope that they're a little afraid of him, right? They're a little like, I let my guy down. I mean, saying it afterward is one thing, not letting it happen again. Look at how many times Gabe Davis and he were on the wrong page.
Right.
It's ridiculous for a guy that had been around that long. They were saying, Josh is my guy. Well, if he is your guy, run the right route. Make the right play. So, yes, I want to see that. I said, I want to see Josh doesn't have to be like yelling and screaming as a leader, but let him know who the boss is. And I think with the right guys in there, they walk into the room now going, I'm playing with Josh freaking Allen, and I'm not going to let him down. And that's what I want to see. I want to see him demand that from his players in whatever way he's comfortable doing that.
Mike, could you talk yourself into thinking that any of these guys that we've been, kind of looking at, that any one of them would actually be a fit in this Bills offense, kind of taking it from the standpoint that it's actually the quarterback that makes the wide receiver? Like, what are your thoughts on these guys?
I don't buy all that.
No?
I don't buy that it's always the quarterback that makes. Listen, you got certain routes to run. They do not have a guy to stand on the outside and pressure the defense. They just don't. They don't have – that's not Curtis Samuel's way to play. They don't have that guy. Who is the outside? Who is that guy? The boundary receiver. They don't have him. He needs that. Josh needs that. It's great that Kincaid catches the ball. It's great that Curtis Samuel can do different things. It's great that every time you seem to throw the ball to Shakir, he catches it. But you need that guy. Somebody's got to play that role for you. And I'm not saying Josh can't make them better because he will get the ball to people. But there's a point where, like, you know, it's like having guys around a LeBron James. But you need guys that make shots. Like, he does need guys that will do as well as he can play. He needs guys that'll do it. So I don't think just anybody. Like, I look at a guy like Worthy from Texas, speedster, can fly. Great to have a guy like that on the team, but I don't know if that's the right fit for them. Or Ladd McConkey. I think he's going to be a really good player in the league, but I don't know if he's what you need based on the current room. Now, look, if you're drafting in the first round, you got to draft the best possible guy, but that's why I keep going back. Hey, listen, if I had it my way, Dangerous Bears would be trading the 9th pick to the Bills.
Be great for the Bills.
Odunze would be coming to Buffalo because I think he would be perfect for Allen in this offense.
Agreed.
So
100%.
can you work on that? I got polls. We can call polls.
Let's call them together. I mean, he needs draft picks. Let's face it. He needs some picks. Bills
have
plenty.
By the way, do they need draft picks? Because I was thinking of it. They don't have the later picks. This draft is considered not the deepest once you get to the 4th, 5th round, just by the type of player who's come out. If I'm the Bears, I don't know. I mean, it's not they need players, but there's a lot of people around the league that think it's not that big a difference between maybe guys you get in the 6th and 7th round that you would have gotten as free agents. So we'll see. But I think the hard thing is you're at 28. You're at 28. I think one thing you can dangle in front of people is either next year's one or even that Minnesota pick that they got for Diggs in the 2nd round. That's going to be a pretty valuable pick that they could deal for next year. I think there's maybe more value there. 28 it's just not a great spot to be at. But, yeah, if you ask me my guy I want, honestly, I think I would take him over Neighbors for the Bills. I think Harrison's going to be great. But, I mean, the other option is to try to trade with either Cincinnati or San Francisco for either Higgins or Ayuk. I don't know if any of that will come to play, in the draft. But, Odunze would be the guy I would want, but I don't know if they can get him.
Mike, what from what we heard from Brandon Beane and what we've heard really since Beane and McDermott kind of took over this franchise, do they still have a type? We've always heard separation guy. You're talking about guy, needing a guy on the boundary, a guy on the outside who can kind of do it all. And Beane talked a little bit about that last week in terms of what they're going to be looking for, what they are looking for in a wide receiver. Is it strictly about the ability to separate? Is it about the size and the ability to go up and get it, or is it a combination of all of it, and that's the guy that you get to replace a talent, a star like Steph Diggs?
Yeah, I think when you leave yourself as vulnerable as they are right now, I do think there's a certain part that there is, to me, it's a glaring need. It's not necessarily always size. It's funny because Beane's talked about it, other guys have talked about it. You have a guy like Steve Smith was 5'9", 5'10", and played like he was 6'4", right? There's just players like that. But I think it's the traits that a player has. And there is certain physical traits. Now, listen, they also need the guy to be able to handle the playbook, understand it, be able to step in and play. Doesn't mean they're going to be perfect right away, but be able to do that. So I think that always comes into play. But right now, I do think, like I said, I think it's a glaring need for that type of player on the outside. And I think in terms of the wide receivers, I think that's what they would prioritize is a size player that can play on the outside. And again, 6 feet, 6'1", 6'2", just get Odunze here. That's all we need. That's all we need.
Mike, you did have the report, first the report about the training camp. We're still waiting on the official word on that. There was also this story from last week that the PGA Championship, because we recall, hey, that was really fun. We want to have another one here in Rochester. They awarded one for 2031.
Yeah.
You've got contacts over there at Oak Hill. I mean, are we still in line if the Oak Hill wants it to get another PGA Championship in 2033?
Yeah, this one was just taken care of for 31. I will tell you this, from what I was told too, the negotiations between the PGA of America and Oak Hill, and in turn Rochester, Monroe County, have changed a bit in general, just the way these tournaments have gone, the size of the tournaments, the footprint, what they want, what they expect. I think in the past, to be quite honest, I think more the PGA would pick the club, they'd make a deal, and then come in. I think it's going to be different now. I think they hold the keys here a little bit. I think they go to a town or a community and a country club and say, what can you do for us? And so I think those conversations will continue. Look, it would make sense for 33, right? You had 03, 13, 23, 33. They have the U.S. Amateur coming in 27. That's not a PGA of America event. That's USGA, which is the U.S. Open track. And I don't know if Rochester has any shot of that at Oak Hill. I still think it's on the table, but keeping in mind that they've just now given the 31 to a country club and to a town, that there's a little bit of time before they're, where they feel the need to make a move quickly. And Oak Hill is built for that tournament. I mean, they did all that work, phenomenal changes. So I think Oak Hill would be ready. I think people there are very hopeful, but, you'll see. They're at Valhalla coming up in May. We'll see. But I'm still pretty hopeful that Oak Hill will get it to come back one more time.
Mike, quick check on your Sixers for tonight. Down 0-1 to the Knicks. How's Embiid feeling? What are we hearing?
He was at the shoot-around today. Look, honestly, when I saw him go down the other day, I saw more fear than injury in him because I think he's sitting down there going, did I just do this again? And then he comes off, and then he got it checked out, and he came back out. Look, he's playing through the recovery from knee surgery, and he was dominant for the first half, and he did not play as well in the second half. In the third quarter, not in the fourth. He's not 100%. Now, Maxey missed the shoot-around today with illness. Not ideal. I think he'll play, unless he's really, really sick. I think he'll play. I think the Knicks are not a great matchup for them, but they could have, if not should have, won the game the other night. Knicks hit some big shots down the stretch. They run a bunch of guys, and they crash the boards. If the Sixers can do a decent job on the boards, they certainly can win. But the Knicks are tough. Yeah. They're a tough team. They're well coached. They play hard. And, the guys made shots down the stretch. I mean, so that made it tough the other night. So we'll see tonight. Obviously, it's a huge game. I had said last week I thought this series was going to end up being 2-2 after the 4 games. If I was guessing, I thought lose game 1, win game 2, win game 3, lose game 4, and go back to the Garden 2-2. So I'll stick with that's what it'll end up being. But heck of a series, and we'll see what happens tonight.
Mike, last one for me, and it's about the Amherst. Certainly a lot of people are going to be excited about this, and it was good to see that big crowd on Friday. Yes. We had Dan Fates on last week. I'll ask you the same question I asked him. What do you think is this year's Amherst roster actually better than last year's, the one that made it all the way to the semifinal?
It could be. Remember, they didn't get off to the best start, and then they got going. You just never know, right? Like Syracuse did not look good down the stretch. The Amherst played really well, but you never know what happens in a playoff series. And these 5-game series, well, in their case, it was down and then back, and they won it. I just think the way Appert coaches this team, the way they respond, the way Levi is playing, I think they're going to be a tough out for anybody. And you saw how bunched up the division was. So you could still be really good and get knocked out. I mean, it could have happened last year. But, it's funny how we went from the point of saying, oh, God, could they just win a series? Could they do something? Now it's getting to be almost like the old days where we expect it because they've done it. And I like the talent. I like the roster. I like the mix of players. And right now I like the goaltending. And so this would be fun to see. We've seen Ryan Miller do it. We've seen Marty Baron do it. Let's see a goalie get a chance to make a little run, show what he can do in a playoff series when it's all on your back. And, I think the team 2 years ago with goaltending could have gone pretty far too. So, it's funny. I have faith in the culture that they've built there, that they're going to do well. But, it's hard to predict sometimes when the teams are as tight as they were in the North Division this year.
Mike, what are we expecting here this week with your draft coverage at 13 Wham Sports and, of course, BuffaloPlus.com?
Yeah, we're going right in now to record our latest podcast. One of the things we're talking about for the YouTube channel is what we want the Bills to do, what we think they'll do. And then we're going to talk a little bit about in terms of where they are roster-wise now, some of the stuff we just talked about. And we're also going to, this massive deal that just happened with Zach Wilson.
Yeah, I know.
That quarterback room. Think about that quarterback room with Jared Stidham, Ben DiNucci, and Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
How do you pick a starter out of that group?
Don't worry, Mike. They got brand new uniforms to distract the fans about how bad they are.
Seriously. Listen, I get the idea of the uniforms. You want to put them out there, but come on. You bring in that is a poorly run organization. Pay a fortune for a coach. Pay a fortune for a quarterback before you get the coach. He doesn't like the quarterback. Get rid of him. Pay millions of dollars. You have nobody. If ever a team should be tanking on a year, it's probably the Broncos. But who knows what they'll do? They're sitting there at 12, which honestly, if they were smart, maybe they're trading back and trying to get some extra picks if they're not going to take a quarterback. But so maybe that's a target for the Bills. But yes, that's what we'll be talking about, and we'll have coverage all week long, and then the night, after each round of the draft, and it'll all be on the YouTube channel for Buffalo Plus.
Sounds good, Mike. It's good to not be talking baseball with you. We'll catch up after the draft.
This is a new Gene Battaglia here.
So it's nice for you now. What have you bought any extra, jerseys or put up some little pennants, or do you have the little helmet? You must be really excited that they won a few games.
Mike, it's April 22nd. It's April 22nd. I'm telling you, you don't believe me. Danger doesn't believe me. This is the new me.
It's bad for the show. I don't like it.
So what's the new you, that you're just realistic to know it'll fall apart?
No, everything will go fine. I'm just going to savor it more when it happens. I'm just keeping my mouth shut is going to be my new MO. Because I think about how I harmed our relationship when I got off the rails one time.
You enhanced it. You enhanced it. And by the way, we are the ones savoring this, because while you say this, we know you're sitting there going, oh, my God, we won 6 in a row. Look at it. And by the way, isn't it funny you won 6 in a row and didn't gain any ground on the other two teams, which is hilarious. But Phillies haven't even started hitting yet, and their pitching has been so dominant. But, it's April.
Yeah.
We get excited in September and October. That baseball still goes on in those months.
Mike, I'm going to be the same kind of level-headed person May, June, July, August. You're not going to see me get all giddy. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, fellas.
Appreciate you, buddy. Mike Catalana, 13 Web Sports, BuffaloPlus.com. I'm proud of you, Gino. You haven't cracked. Everybody's egging you on, myself included. You're even keeled. Something's going to happen. I don't know what it's going to be.
They gave up 10 runs to the Dodgers yesterday.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Something will happen, but the Dodgers, by the way, getting kind of a weird start for them, for as much hype was around that team. But it is April.
The story, too, I should pass this on real quick, and I know we're late here, Danger, but the Yankees lost to Oakland 2-0. I sent you this video of Aaron Boone getting tossed. A fan in the... you could tell by Boone's reaction. He gets tossed. He has no idea. Wendelstedt, the umpire, throwing Boone out for what a fan said, thinking it was Boone actually yelling at him, but it was actually a fan. And, well, kind of your latest in the ump show.
Oh, boy. Was it Angel? It wasn't Angel Hernandez.
No, this was Wendelstedt.
Oh, Wendelstedt. All right. We'll take a break and come back. We've got some takes on tap with I'll Drink to That. We'll talk some more NFL draft with our buddy Chris Trapasso. He's going to join us in the 4 o'clock hour as well. Your phone call's always welcome at 866-4FAN, 585-866-4326.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
We're finally into draft week.
And let's go Buffalo!
Mike Danger.
Look, I know I'm 12 years old, Gino. I have a very juvenile sense of humor. Farts are and will always be hilarious to me.
Gene Battaglia.
25% of the Buffalo Bills are for sale. Danger, you want to put in a bid here, bud?
You've got the NFL draft, the NBA playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Let's go! Isak Rosean makes it back-to-back just like that, and the Amherst lead it once more. It's 3-2.
The Rochester Amherst clinched the 2 seed in the North Division. They'll be facing off against Syracuse in the best of 5 series.
Amherst Crunch, Friday at 7. Game 1.
Playoffs?
Oh, yeah, folks.
Ow! It really hit me. I didn't know it was coming back that far.
Scotty Scheffler, that's 4 victories in his last 5 starts and 10 over the last 26 months.
The Nighthawks also secured a spot in the NLL playoffs.
Score!
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Less than 20 minutes away from our conversation with Chris Passo, CBS Sports draft analyst. He'll stop by the Sports Bar here right around 4:25, 4:30. We appreciate you checking out the Sports Bar, however you may be doing so. 95.7 FM, AM 950 locally, the free-to-download Odyssey app. You can get us on your smart device when you ask it to play, 95.7 The Fan. And you can also check out the video stream, the Fan Rochester YouTube channel, and also twitch.tv/The Fan Rochester.
Knocking cameras off.
Is that what happened over there?
Totally. Like, it's got this weird thing that if you just adjust it, sometimes the whole thing will fall apart. So very, very sensitive.
We actually got a message on our Twitch stream from something we were talking about earlier today when we were talking with Mike Catalana about the future of the Rochester Nighthawks, and I mentioned how in Terry Pegula's press conference when they acquired the team, it almost sounded as if he was doing it out of charity. This from 585 Ron in the Twitch stream was not out of charity. They brought back the Nighthawks to continue to keep a team when the former owner took the team to Halifax. Team officials are saying they're not leaving, guys. Okay,
Ron. Yeah, we know the story, but go back and listen to the press conference on September 13th, 2018. He called it a contribution to the Rochester community. In fact, I think we have the audio here. So, Ron, I appreciate you writing in. You're writing and listening. But, we know the story. We definitely know the story.
It will have the Nighthawks legacy, and we're very proud to contribute again to the Western New York and the Rochester community by keeping the team here.
Contribute.
Yeah.
It's a contribution. It sounds a little charity-like. Like, okay, well, we're doing it again. We're just bailing out Western New York. Here we are, the Pegulas, just contributing to Rochester, contributing to Western New York.
Yeah, it probably, if you called him and said, hey, the team, I'd like to purchase the Rochester Nighthawks, they would listen to you. There's no doubt about that. We've been talking today about how the Pegulas are apparently putting up 25 up to, again, it's kind of just a round number there, according to Tim Graham. Like a portion of the Buffalo Bills is up for sale. Somebody identifying as Dr. Jekyll writing in, could the Buffalo Bills do a Green Bay and sell stock to people to make up the money?
Ah, yes. Everybody loves that idea.
No. Never, ever would the NFL allow that. They want to control because here's a little secret, right? Kind of sort of like a pyramid scheme, right? Like you want to buy in and then eventually you want to cash out and you have generational wealth when you're done. Or maybe you pass it along. You know when that doesn't happen? When you go to the model of, say, the Green Bay Packers. So, yes, absolutely. I would love that. Would it ever happen? No, not in a million years.
Dan reaching out to us on Elon's Twitter. That's X at the Fan Rochester. Excited for Friday because it's looking like me and my girlfriend will be going to Bill Gray's Tap Room in Chilai. Perk is I get to see Danger and Battaglia. Hopefully, Dan, we'll be there. That's Friday for day 2 of the draft. Now, Thursday, we should mention we will be at our usual spot for day 1. That would be Three Heads Brewing. Rochester's largest patio will be open. I haven't looked at the forecast yet, but it's open for the season.
It's going to be dry.
Yeah. All right. You can check out that new Melon Head Watermelon Sour, other fine beers that they have there on Thursday. delicious wood fire pizza from Freddy's. That's coming up Thursday as we broadcast live from 3 until 6 for day one of the NFL draft. And then you know the deal at Three Heads. We hang out afterwards. We commiserate. We
can share a cold one and maybe a win or two.
And then we're going to double up. But we're going to do it again Friday for day 2 of the draft. We'll take the show to Chai Taproom at Bill Gray's Chai Avenue location. That's the location Dan is referring to. And like Dan, we hope to see you out there Friday for day 2 of the NFL.
You know why we have Friday? Because Friday, you could say, is just as important to NFL teams picking the second and third round. It's also still reacting to what happened Thursday night, because so many storylines will come out of Thursday night, and we're all kind of reacting to it, and we're all comparing notes and takes and everything else like that. So you can start your weekend Thursday and Friday. And you know what? If you come out to both, you're getting a little love from us. Certainly.
Let's get to some takes before we get Trapasso in here in a little bit.
Yeah, presumptive number 1 overall pick Caleb Williams went on a podcast with Ryan Clark where he talked about career goals. Quote, I want to play at one place for 20 years and chase one guy, number 12. He's talking about Brady there.
Yeah.
What on earth? Terry Pegula and his win multiple Stanley Cups line are embarrassed by this quote, Danger.
Oh, Gino, you're trolling me right now. This is a complete troll job. You're bringing this up because you want me to overreact. You want me to get pissed off that you would even question this kid.
Well,
what's he supposed to say?
How about just, like, let's have a really good camp. I want to win some games. I want to learn. Like, I want to, have a better career than Tom Brady. Are you kidding?
I would want every prospect to say that.
No, that's lunacy.
It's not lunacy. It's okay. I want these guys to be crazy. I want them to be pissed off for greatness. I want them to say things like, I can be what Tom Brady is. That's goals. Those are dreams. Nothing. You see, now you got me. Now I'm fired up. Now I'm defending my guy. He's not even my guy yet.
He is your guy. He's going to go there. And my concern for you being my friend, is that we're going to see Caleb Williams and the team starts out 1-5, and it's really not looking good. And by the way, you could say anything you want about Belichick. He did foster this environment around Brady that sort of worked, and Drew Bledsoe was a part of that. Do you have that environment in Chicago? I'm not so sure. Take it one step at a time. I'm trying to manage your expectations, buddy.
Buddy, I'm going to be okay. I'll be fine. And I don't hate this. I don't know what he's supposed to say. I don't know what Terry Pegula was supposed to say. I mean, multiple Stanley Cups now, in hindsight, we look at it and we're like, yeah, he's crazy. But at the time, we were all eating it up.
Oh, my gosh. We were all eating it up. But then you got to be a man of your word. You got to follow through.
What I want to hear from any prospect, no matter what your team is, what you'd want to hear is, I'm here to win championships. That's all I want to hear. When Caleb Williams gets drafted on Thursday, I don't want to hear him talk about how he can't wait to try deep dish pizza. I don't want to hear him talk about how cold the winters are.
I like the bear or whatever.
I want him to say, I am here to kill. I'm here to assassinate. I am here to win championships for the Chicago Bears. Anything short of that, I don't know what anybody else wants to hear, but that's what I want to hear.
You and Tony, your buddy, are going to go out to Chicago, aren't you? You're going to be so excited to watch this guy.
I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know.
I see the love affair already
maybe
growing.
I'll take a day or two and leave you hanging here in the sports bar by yourself. You and Dan DeLorean can do the show as well. I'm spending a couple extra days in Chicago.
We'll be all fine.
Yeah, we'll work it out. Hey, and not to be a boner killer here for some hot uniform talk. You know we love some hot uniform talk in the sports bar, but our last guest, and we touched on this a little bit here, the Icon, he brought up something today around the release of Denver's new threads. I think this stance will make you happy that the Bills don't participate in the now annual tradition of changing up a team's uniform. It's something that poorly run teams, bad teams, do to distract their fans from the fact that they're poorly run and bad. Check your notes. The Jets, bad. The Broncos, bad. Falcons, bad. Teams you don't see doing this. The Steelers, the Ravens, the Packers, and yes, the Bills. Hot uniform talk is a lot of fun. We love doing it here in the sports bar at the expense of the horrible teams who wear them. Yeah, you're doing the thing. You're doing the meme of the girl going, not sure if you like it? No, it's a good take. Bad teams do this. Good teams don't need to do this.
What was unusual about the Broncos rollout was they rolled it out, and we're like, Okay, so you look kind of like a cross between the Bears and the Falcons and everything. Like, where you should have just gone back to the throwback, and like an hour later, they're like,
throwback is coming.
Oh, here we are. Oh, this is so great.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I'll add the Bears. I'll add the Bears to that list. The one with the orange helmet and everything.
Dumb.
Like, here's our new look.
Dumb.
Stupid. It's what bad teams do to distract their fans. It's a reminder that you're a bad team. The Bucks. I mean, the Bucks were a playoff team, but you're doing things at a time when they brought back Bucko Bruce. It just so happened to coincide with the time when Tom Brady was about to hang it up. Maybe we're going to be bad with Baker Mayfield. We don't know. I just think it's become clear that the teams that engage in this most frequently are bad teams. Yeah, poorly run teams.
I never even thought about that. Like the Chiefs don't have a third helmet.
No. They're not doing the alternate jersey. They're not wondering when are we going to roll out our black. Now, you could say the Eagles. The Eagles, okay, maybe the Eagles. I would say they do it because the Kelly green is such a classic look, and the fan base wants it.
The Bengals did it too.
The white, the white. That's a clean look as well. I just think the majority of the teams that engage in this annual tradition now of changing up our logos or adding a new jersey or whatever it is. Gino, when the Bills roll out the red helmet that everybody wants them to roll out, when that happens,
they're going to be bad.
It's them telling you, we don't think we're going to be very good this year.
Well, they could have done that the day after Steph Diggs. They would have been like, oh, okay, you have Steph.
Oh, it's forgiven. We've forgotten everything. Well, how quickly things change, by the way. I mean, Diggs is gone, and now everybody, is so quick to just pile dirt on Diggs. That's going to be a hard guy to replace. Hard guy to replace. The production, maybe you spread it out, but the guy, the player, the talent, hard talent to replace.
Wow. Will the Bills be out in front of this? Hey, here's A.D. Mitchell, our first-round pick, or whoever that may be. Will we hear that? He is not here to replace Steph Diggs. Will you hear that on draft night?
Of course. Nobody can replace Steph Diggs. That'll be the answer. Well, nobody can replace Steph Diggs. You're going to be sold. Whoever it is, we're going to be over the moon. We're head over heels. It doesn't matter who
that
it's
is
going to be.
True of the Bills and every other team. See Caleb Williams and the Bears and everything else. Which sport, Danger, do you think is going to look radically different when you tune in, say, 2-3 years from now? I'm going to say it's the NBA. You know what today is? Today is the day, the exclusive window for ESPN and Warner, or the owners of TNT, have the negotiated renewal. I think that's going to kind of expire, which means NBA executives and business people think the new deal could be $60 to $75 billion, which is about 2.5 more times the current deal. Like, where are they going to go? Amazon, Apple? I mean, the current deal, by the way, expires after next season.
So both ESPN and TNT could potentially be out of the NBA business when it's all said and done.
I would be surprised that we've kind of settled in. Like, it's on one or the other. And I think for ESPN, it makes sense. Hey, here's the bigger games. Put a Saturday game on ABC. And I'm predicting
I feel like ESPN won't renew. I feel like ESPN would be the one that would back out. Because they don't have that kind of, they're trying to sell. Disney's trying to sell.
I think you're right on that for this reason. Notice who, they almost sending signals of cooing up to the NHL.
Oh.
When you're spotlighting the NHL, when the NBA is opening up the same time, that's almost like a preemptive.
It's a more affordable form of content, and you could argue that the product is better in the postseason than what the NBA puts out there. You can make that argument.
I would make the argument, though, it's inverted. Like right now, we're like, oh my gosh, hockey is so great. It's so great. When we get to the finals in the NBA, the conference finals for that matter, we'll all be glued. These first-round matchups, okay, who won? Home team, home team, home team, home. How exciting is that? We didn't have one upset there in all the opening games.
Oh, and to further my point from last week, by the way, speaking of not exciting, congratulations on Scotty Scheffler for winning every PGA tournament for the rest of the year. Boring. It's boring. Oh, let's look at the leaderboard. Who do we got? Scheffler, Wyndham Clark, Colin Morikawa. You're kidding me. Really? Again? The same three guys? Is this what we're going to get for the rest of the golf season?
Golf has a big problem.
They have a big problem, dude. A big problem, and it's called LIV. The LIV Tour, whether we want to admit it or not, has harmed the PGA. I don't know they're coming back from this. They have to do this merger. They've got to get these guys on the course together again because as great as Scotty Scheffler is, this is boring. It's not a compelling product when the same guy is winning every week. And I know we say, Tiger won every week. What's wrong? What's the difference between Tiger and Scotty Scheffler? Tiger did it against the best in the world. Scheffler's doing it against a bunch of slappies, Xander Schauffele and Wyndham Clark. That's it. That's his competition. Got to get those guys back together. It's a tough thing. I mean, I want to see greatness. I don't know that what I'm seeing. I don't know if he's great. Great golfer. Did it again at the Masters. What more could you ask for? I just want something other than milquetoast Scotty Scheffler winning every weekend for the golf.
I miss John Rahm.
Yes, John Rahm, of course.
John Rahm.
We've got to get to. Oh yeah,
yeah. That John Rahm. He's pretty good, but he's playing for Liv now, Danger.
We got to get to Chris Trapasso. It's a good Western New York name. CBS Sports Draft Analyst. We're going to talk to Chris one last time before we get to Thursday, day one of the NFL Draft in Detroit. And which direction will Brandon Beane and the Buffalo Bills head? We'll get Chris's latest thoughts and thoughts on his latest mock as well. That's coming up next on The Fan Rochester.
You're listening to Top Shelf Sports Talk. You're hanging out in the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
All right, you're back in the sports bar. It's Danger and Battaglia. Glad you're with us and looking forward to Thursday, Friday, this entire weekend. Really going to feel like football is back with the NFL Draft. Rounds 1 and 2, Thursday and Friday. And well, let's start talking about what the Bills could be doing here with that pick at 28. Do they move up? Well, one of our favorites to talk NFL Draft because he does such a great job at CBS Sports is our buddy Chris Trapasso, repping the 585. Let's talk about it, Chris. We know that this is your silly time, your busy time of year. We appreciate you stopping by and giving us one last conversation before we get to Thursday. Right now, where's your head at as far as what the Bills could do, what Brandon Beane should do, and you know how everything kind of falls to them here when they're picking on Thursday night?
Yeah, great question. I think that's the one that's on everyone's mind. It's more so than any other draft in the Brandon Beane and even Sean McDermott era going back to 2018, 2017. I don't know what they're going to do. There's so many new assistant coaches, people that are probably pretty prominent in these war rooms and all these draft discussions that the Bills have had at One Bills Drive over the last couple months, that we can't really go by past prototypes. Do they go for the smaller separators like a Stephon Diggs, a John Brown, a Cole Beasley, or do they like the bigger defensive ends like they've always had, or is Bobby Babich going to have kind of a stamp on this draft as the new defensive coordinator? We don't know if he's going to call the plays yet, but maybe the Bills go in a different direction in that sense. But I do think that Brandon Beane will have a hard time not trading up in this draft. I think A.D. Mitchell, if they stay put, makes a lot of sense, but the trade up, which I think makes the most sense if you are on that train, would be a slight trade up to get Brian Thomas Jr. Joe Brady obviously didn't coach him at LSU, but has the connections to that LSU program. He just feels like that bigger-bodied, explosive receiver that can create those big plays, either just with the ball in his hands or just blowing past cornerbacks, that the Bills will not have to mortgage the future, next year's first, second, a lot of extra picks in order to get him. So he kind of feels like if you're more on the aggressive side and think that's where Brandon Beane will go, Brian Thomas Jr. seems to make the most sense to me.
So how far do you think they would have to get? Like, I'm assuming you don't give up next year's 1, but maybe a 2 or something. Like, how far up would you have to go to get Brian Thomas Jr.?
Somewhere between pick 15, which is the Colts, and the Steelers at 20. There was a report, I think Adam Schefter and Jeremy Fowler from ESPN kind of posted an article about what they're hearing for ESPN Plus earlier today, and in it was that the Steelers are reportedly, and again, it still is lying season. We heard from Bill Belichick that not really until the day of the draft do we get some real information, but that the Steelers were really smitten with Brian Thomas Jr., and they picked 20. You have the Jaguars at 17, the Bengals at 18. I don't know if either of those teams would be really keen on making a trade with the Bills, although the Jaguars did last year when the Bills picked Dalton Kincaid. So I feel like in that 15 to 20 range, which again, maybe that would only be pick 28 and pick 60 in order to move up 8 to 10 spots to get Brian Thomas Jr.
All right, so let's talk about if we have bigger eyes and we say to ourselves, you know what, Brian Thomas Jr. is nice, but really the guy that they should go get is a Rome Odunze type of guy. How do the Bills find their way into the top 10 and get a guy that you feel like is probably more of a can't-miss prospect?
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I could see the Bills certainly targeting that, and maybe this is the week, probably this is the week, where and the time where Brandon Beane will be calling those teams like the Bears at 9, Titans at 7, even maybe Falcons at 8. There's a decent chance, I don't think it's guaranteed, but there's a good chance that one of those big 3 receivers, whether it's Marvin Harrison Jr., the least likely, Rome Odunze, and Malik Nabers from LSU are there when the Bears pick at 9. And I think to do that, they would probably have to give up next year's first, maybe a mid-rounder next year as well, 4th or 5th, along with pick 60 and, of course, 28 in this year's draft. So it would be a lot to give up, but it would have a direct impact on your quarterback, Josh Allen. He would have a direct impact on that, quote-unquote can't-miss receiver, ultimately being a instant impact type that would help out the rest of the offense. You could certainly wrap your brain around it. Not for most teams, but for a team that feels like they're very close but now has a wide receiver need. And we've always gone back to that would have to be a Julio Jones-esque trade up. Well, that trade worked for the Falcons. They were a 28-3 score in the Super Bowl away from winning a Super Bowl. They had Roddy White at the time, but they needed a little bit more of a jolt. And Julio Jones had a Hall of Fame career there and was integral in a lot of those awesome offenses in Atlanta. So the precedent that's set really worked out for that team. So I wonder if Brandon Beane is looking at those parameters and eyeing which spot he would have to get to in the top 10 to get a Rome Odunze or a Malik Neighbors.
All right, so we've mentioned a couple of LSU wide receivers. Compare and contrast here the difference between a guy like Neighbors, who could be a top 10 overall pick, versus a guy like Thomas, who the Bills might only have to trade up a little bit to go and get. What does Neighbors offer that Thomas doesn't? What makes these two wide receivers different in your eyes?
Very good question. Malik Neighbors is my wide receiver 1 in this class, and that is electricity down the field after the catch. I think you can look at Marvin Harrison Jr. and see a very polished wide receiver who's pretty big, has the lineage, obviously, with his dad. He runs awesome routes, tracks it amazingly. The route running for Malik Neighbors is not to Marvin Harrison's level, but after the catch, Malik Neighbors is a different beast than anyone in this class. That's including Marvin Harrison Jr. When he catches that 8-yard comeback, it might be a 70-yard touchdown. That's how quickly he can accelerate and get from 0 to 60. He had a 42-inch vertical at the LSU Pro Day, ran in the low 4.3s. With Brian Thomas, you get a little bit more size, but not as much dynamic after the catch ability, and he's not quite as good tracking the football down the field. To me, Malik Neighbors is as complete as you're going to get at wide receiver. He reminds me of a Brandon Ayuk or a CeeDee Lamb when they were both coming out of Arizona State and Oklahoma. They weren't polished Marvin Harrison-esque route runners, but their athleticism, the stop and start ability was just on another level.
We're talking to Chris Trapasso, our friend from CBS Sports, as the NFL draft coming up on Thursday. I think a lot of Bills fans would kind of nod and be like, okay, that's good if the Bills actually stayed at 28 and ended up with a Ladd McConkey. What would be great is, like, okay, say they went in a different direction. What are the odds? Where do you have McConkey falling? Could he fall? I don't think to 60, but maybe somewhere early second round, Chris.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think with the Bills, they're at 28, and the Chiefs at 32, those are two spots for McConkey that are pretty reasonable. But I do know, and I mean, I don't know the specifics, but I do know that some teams have a little bit of concern about his injury past. That this past season, if you look at the stats, you see 30 catches, and it's like, why did he only have 30 catches? It wasn't because he wasn't productive when he was on the field, but he battled a myriad of injuries last season at Georgia. 5'11", 185 pounds, doesn't have a big, sturdy frame. So if Ladd McConkey is not picked in the first round, which I think his film is first-round caliber, it'll probably be because of the medical concerns. And then all of a sudden, he's there mid to late 30s, early 40s, and maybe if the Bills go in a different direction and go completely the other side of the ball on defense in the first round, that's where we could see the Brandon Beane trade up. He's done it before, did it with Cody Ford. He did it with Dawson Knox from the fourth round to the fourth round to the third round in that same draft, 2019. So there is some precedent for Brandon Beane making that trade up, but just after the first round ends.
Chris, when we heard from Brandon Beane last week during the voluntary portion of the offseason program, he mentioned that the smokescreen of we don't really need a wide receiver one, and we don't, the idea that they're looking for a player who can not only do all the physical things that you would want your wide receiver one to do. You're trying to replace Steph Diggs after all, but he also mentioned the intellect, which leads you to believe like this person is going to be expected to come in and contribute immediately day one and pick up that playbook and get it. So my question is, you have all these wide receiver prospects and it's a deep class and you could get somebody later in the later rounds, but which one of these prospects do you think checks that intellect box that Brandon Beane referenced last week?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I guess we'll ultimately see if Brandon Beane was telling the truth on wanting to get a true wide receiver one, or it was just total part of lying season. To me, it would probably be Ladd McConkey. I mean, the fact that last season wasn't quite as productive, like I mentioned, 30 catches because of the injuries, but the year before, his offensive coordinator was Todd Monken, who was now the Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator. A pretty complex system. They like to run the ball, but the receivers ran a variety of routes. It wasn't just bubble screens and RPOs. So I think Ladd McConkey, like in terms of who could be in the Bills' range would make a lot of sense to tick that box. I think Marvin Harrison Jr., like I mentioned, is the most just purely polished wide receiver who can run what we always hear about, that full route tree. He can run any route that you want and get open. But after that, I think in that range, mid to late 20s, maybe even into the early second, like you guys mentioned, Ladd McConkey just looks like the most polished, ready-to-go player in terms of not even just running routes, but finding that hole in zone, understanding when to come back for the football, things like that. I think he does a lot of those nuances very well.
Chris Trapasso, CBS Sports, our guest. Chris, a two-part question. One, because a lot of people speculating that we could have a record number of offensive players go in round one. If you believe that's true, would there be something to be said here for, well, just go to where the value is, and that actually might point the Bills in the direction of defense in round one?
That is an awesome question, and it's something that I think Bills fans have to kind of brace themselves for. That, remember, the draft is 7 rounds. The Bills have 10 picks. I know most of them are on day 3, but they've hit on a lot of day 3 prospects like Khalil Shakir, Christian Benford, Taron Johnson was a 4th-round pick. So, I think we could see 20, 21, maybe even 22 offensive players in round one, and suddenly if 4, 5, 6, 7 receivers are already off the board when the Bills go on the clock, and Jared Verse from Florida State, the edge rusher, is there, or Chop Robinson from Penn State is also there, or maybe even on the interior, Johnny Newton from Illinois, Byron Murphy from Texas. I think those are other need positions, and that would be awesome value for any of those players that I mentioned, that the Bills would maybe think, look, we didn't have the wide receiver class fall to us. Maybe they made some trade offers, but the asking price was too rich. They're trying to kind of free up cap space and kind of recoup everything on the salary side for 2025. That's why they traded Stephon Diggs and are eating all the money now. Maybe they don't want to, waste, or I don't want to say waste, but use some of those assets in a huge trade-up. I think it would make sense to just go best player available and let the depth of the receiver class kind of come to you at pick 60, and probably even later on. You could pick a receiver in round 2, in round 5, and then even pick one late if you wanted. I mean, the Green Bay Packers did that 2 years ago. They drafted 3 receivers, and it turned out very well for them.
Chris, I want to kind of follow up what Gene is asking about and talk more about the Bills and how they value positions, positional value, and whether or not there's something to be said for them having that control of cost with the first-round draft pick. Do they value wide receiver enough to have that cost control, or would they be better served on the defensive side of the ball and controlling the cost for the first 5 years of a player on the defensive line?
Well, it's a great question because we have seen wide receiver and interior defensive line, those salaries skyrocket. So what you're hinting at is, it's why a quarterback on a rookie deal is so valuable to a team, because you're getting him at $3, $4, $5 million cap hit when the top player at that position is making $50 million a year, or $55. We're going to start to see some huge contracts. I think either of those two spots, because wide receiver has gotten super expensive. We might even see the 49ers trade Brandon Ayuk really at the prime of his career after a second-team All-Pro season, because he might command $25 to $30 million a year. But certainly defensive tackles with Christian Wilkins signing the big deal, the Bills could think, hey, look, we're not really spending a ton there. We got Ed Oliver on a cheap deal, and maybe, again, we will see, does Bobby Babich and do Sean McDermott together say, we need more interior pass rush? I think the Bills need that. Daquan Jones is great. Austin Johnson, great, but they're not up-the-field rushers, and I think that in the playoff games, that's been kind of a concern where they have not been able to generate a push on the inside. So, to answer your question, I think both of those two positions, there's such a big gulf between having that player on a rookie deal and the top dollar at that position, that to me, both of those spots, wide receiver and defensive tackle, actually, maybe would make the most sense just from a financial standpoint for the Bills in the first round.
So the Bills do not have a third-round pick, but they got picks on day 3 here, Chris. And I don't think we spend enough time talking about day 3 because, well, we're not familiar with all these names, but you are. So I'll just ask the question kind of broad. Like, in this draft, day 3, rounds 4 through 7, what positions are the deepest, would you say?
Wide receiver is really good. I mean, I think it's gotten to the point where it's a little bit overrated, because I've gotten asked on a bunch of other radio spots, like, is this the best wide receiver class ever? And I'm not going to go that far. If the Bills wanted to add some depth on the offensive line, it's awesome on the interior. And I'm of the belief Connor McGovern can move to center, and I think he can be fine there. Am I really confident in David Edwards as like a 16-game high-level starter at left guard? That really wasn't the case in L.A. with the Rams. I mean, he was a little bit up and down. So if they wanted to add a guard or a center, there's great depth on day 3 there. Guys who can truly play center or guard, a bunch of them. And I think interior defensive line, like I mentioned, if they do go in other directions earlier, I think there's a bunch of names on the interior of the defensive line who 4th, 5th, 6th round picks who can be solid players. The one spot I'm a little concerned about, I don't love the edge rusher class. There's those big 4 that are going to go in the first round that all of your listeners have heard about for the last 3 months. After that, I think you're almost rolling the dice and just hoping that someone can really materialize as a solid player at the edge rusher spot if you had to pick him later in this draft.
Chris, when you think about how the board falls to the Bills here at the end of the first draft, let's talk a little bit about the sexiest position on the field and quarterback and how many you think could go in round 1. And conversely, I also think it's interesting when you look at the players that could get drafted in round 1, is there a player that you're seeing here in your process that if they do go in round 1, they're likely to disappoint the team that drafts them?
Yeah, that is the ultimate question just broadly with the draft, that we get so hyped up and we get kind of set into, all right, who's going to be the first quarterback, who's going to be the second quarterback, and we all assume the order at which they go is how their careers are going to unfold, and we know from history that that's certainly not the case. What is interesting, though, is in 2020, that class could be one of the best ever with Joe Burrow, Tua, Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts. Like, that class was outstanding, and all those guys became quality quarterbacks. I don't know if we're going to get that again. The one player who kind of scares me and I think is the most situation-dependent quarterback in the class is Bo Nix. If he lands with Sean Payton at 12, I think that would be way too early for him, and maybe that would be a good landing spot just because of he's kind of a point guard. That's what Drew Brees was, but he's not Drew Brees as a processor with his accuracy, things like that. He, of all the top 4 or 5 or 6, if you want to include Michael Penix, scare me the most, but I will be surprised if five quarterbacks don't go in the first round. There's seen some mock drafts and it might actually be all 6. That's what we thought last year. We thought Will Levis was going to be the second overall pick, and he went all the way into the second round. So I still think the big 4 will go relatively early, well before the Bills pick, and whether it's Penix or Bo Nix, I think one other team in the middle of the draft will either just pick that quarterback or we'll see a team move back into the first to get either Bo Nix or Michael Penix somewhere before the Bills pick, maybe in the teens or early 20s.
Do you see any surprises at the top of the draft? Could we have like a New England, you know what, we're going to wait on quarterback here, or Arizona not taking Harrison? Like, is there anything that you could see that we're all kind of wrong on here, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, what's so fun is that even for me, and it's like fun to be proven wrong, which seems weird, but like I pour so much time and effort into this that I've come to grips with the fact that in this job, you almost embrace the chaos. And even an Adam Schefter or a Daniel Jeremiah or a Peter Schrager can go into covering the draft at NFL Network or ESPN and like legitimately be surprised when picks come in. I don't think we're going to see the Cardinals move out of 4. It feels like they moved up and down last year. They missed out on Will Anderson. They traded back up, got Paris Johnson, the tackle, who didn't have that great of a rookie season. I think they're just like, look, we're positioned at 4. We've built a team. We have a lot of picks in this class. Let's just pick Marvin Harrison Jr. to give Kyler Murray, a true weapon. What I'm like, the team that I think really can change the entire first round is the LA Chargers. We don't know if Jim Harbaugh is just being on brand and he's in lockstep with his new GM from Baltimore, Joe Hortis, to say, hey, look, we're going to pick an offensive lineman. Like, that's what I want. We all think of offensive linemen when we think of Jim Harbaugh. But are they going to trade back from 5 and let a team move up for a quarterback? Are they going to pick, if Marvin Harrison Jr. was there or if Malik Neighbors is there, are they just going to pick a wide receiver to help Justin Herbert after losing Keenan Allen and Mike Williams? That team, to me, I think kind of holds the keys of what happens and kind of how the dominoes fall in the first round of this draft.
Gino, indulge me for a second, and Chris, humor me. What are the Bears getting in Caleb Williams when he gets drafted first overall? Tell me. Just tell me. Tell this Bears fan it's going to be okay.
I think it's going to be okay as long as, and this is the biggest caveat, as long as his head is on straight, the on-the-field stuff is awesome. It is franchise caliber, and I'll even admit some of the things early on or that were happening late in the season and then early in the process, it would have been easy for me to go into the film and go, you know what? He kind of has a bad attitude. I don't really like the film. I'm out on him. But I was so convinced by the film that I will be surprised, very surprised, if he just flames out. Now, again, it feels like some of the early reports that were he was upset with Chicago, doesn't want to go there. I think maybe those have kind of fizzled because he realizes, hey, we have Keenan Allen, we have DJ Moore, we have a good young offensive line, a decent defense. We're probably going to pick a wide receiver at 9. Like, he actually is in one of the best number 1 overall pick environments that we've seen in a very long time to have those veterans around him and a young talent at receiver, presumably. So I think he's going to be fine. I don't know what Gino thinks. I think he's going to be good.
Well, to be determined. I mean, I kind of latch on to the crying his mom's arms, not talking to reporters after, that little stuff. How much does that factor into any evaluation, Chris? Because certainly that is a part. Like, do NFL GMs really ding that, or do we as fans make too much of it?
No, I think they do. I mean, I don't personally, because I'm not able to talk to these players and say, hey, what happened here? Why were you crying in your mom's arms? Is that normal? Like, how'd your teammate react? But I think other positions, if there's a wide receiver who's a little upset or a deep tackle that slams his helmet after, not getting a sack on 3rd down, I don't think it's a big deal. But quarterbacks, it definitely matters. And it's about handling adversity. You are under the microscope every single week. If your team wins or loses, you're going to either get all the praise or all the blame. And I think, actually, this sounds kind of counterintuitive, but I think Josh Allen's a prime example. The fact that Caleb Williams went through adversity and struggled against pressure, lost some games, his defense couldn't hold up, they lost the bowl game against Tulane the year before, I think that helps him because in Chicago, it's not going to be perfect right away. And there are going to be times where they lose games and he does get the blame. I think it's good to have that. Josh Allen certainly had that against Oregon, against Iowa, Boise State. Like, he had games that were really bad and learned how to just keep going and keep your head up when you're losing or you're not playing at your best. And that's certainly, the NFL can humble the most talented quarterbacks in the league, and it does every year. So I think that's actually good for Caleb Williams, that he just didn't cruise to like back-to-back Heisman and never got pressured and never had any problems at USC.
Chris, I know you're churning out content like crazy at CBSSports.com. As the week progresses here, tell us a little bit more about your coverage and where we can get more of your work here leading up to Thursday and all weekend as well.
So I just posted my finalized big board. That's just my biggest project of the year, 280 prospects that I've watched, evaluated, written scouting reports on. That is on CBS Sports right now. My final mock draft will come out Wednesday, and they kind of let me tweak it a little Thursday morning if there's any major moves that happen. And then during the draft, from the start of the second round, pick 33, all the way until the last pick, 257, get the CBS Sports Draft Tracker as your bookmark, whether it's on your phone or on your computer. If you're following along with the draft, I'll be doing the live draft grades again. 2-3 sentences on each player, the fit, the prospect, and then giving each a letter grade. So it's fun, exhilarating, and exhausting at the same time. That's kind of been my go-to phrase with that.
Yeah, you don't have a lot of time. You got to do all the work ahead of time there, Chris. Chris, appreciate all the work that you do. We always remember when we were starting out how you came out to Three Heads, and we're always grateful for a little bit of your time and very happy to see what you're doing now these days.
Yeah, I think I should come back out to Three Heads after the draft, and we can talk about it.
Well, okay. Let's do it.
Done.
Done deal.
Nice weather, get out on the patio maybe. Like that sounds good to me.
A little
I'm kind of inviting myself on the show again.
A little post-draft roundtable.
Yeah,
I'm into it. I'm into it. Chris, appreciate the time, man. And let's talk after the draft.
All right, sounds good, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris.
Chris Passo, CBSSports.com. Man, the guy is just a machine at just pumping out draft content. Done a great job this season, as he does every year.
I'm believing the Bills will go somewhere other than wide receiver in round 1.
What has you believing that?
And just positional value. And like you mentioned, the cost control and all those things we don't think about.
Right. What's more important to them? Is it more important to control the cost for the first 5 years of a wide receiver's career or a defensive tackle or edge rusher?
You don't have Greg Rousseau have to worry about that for another year, basically. Yeah.
Right. You have Rousseau, and Rousseau, and the only thing that would prevent them and they wouldn't prevent them from doing this, but I mean, like, if you're Brandon Beane and you're just gun shy at this point, like, Ed Oliver's good. Greg Rousseau is good, but you didn't get a great player. Yeah, AJ Epeneza's good. Maybe Rousseau becomes a great player. We haven't seen it yet. He's good, right?
Yeah, but you could, like, to hear Chris say, hey, the 4 big names at edge rusher later rounds,
they might be there at 28 if you stay put. It'll be interesting to watch. Can't wait for it. Mentioned 3 Heads. We will be there Thursday. Live show 3 until 6. Looking forward to seeing you at 3 Heads, where you can enjoy the largest patio in Rochester. It's open now for the season. You can enjoy the Melon Head Watermelon Sour. Refreshing and delicious. Other fine beers as well. And you can get delicious wood-fired pizza from Freddy's. Have the truck set up there in the parking lot. And then Friday, we take it on the road again for day 2 of the NFL Draft. We'll be in Chilai. The Tap Room at Bill Gray's, the Chilai Ave location. That's from 3 until 6, both Thursday and Friday. We take the show on the road for the NFL Draft. Can't wait to experience it all and talk it all over with y'all. If you come out and hang, we'll take care of you. We'll have a good time.
We can share a cold one and maybe a win or two.
As our friend Brett likes to say, happy hour is on the way next in the Sports Bar.
Yeah, let's talk about the draft here. Let's also talk about the news that kind of slipped on Friday there. Wait a second. Terry Pegula is selling, potentially, part of the Buffalo Bills. What could this possibly mean?
That and more. Your phone calls always welcome. 866-4FAN. Pull up a stool. 866-4326.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
We're finally into draft week.
And let's go Buffalo!
Mike Danger.
Look, I know I'm 12 years old, Gino. I have a very juvenile sense of humor. Farts are and will always be hilarious to me.
Gene Battaglia.
25% of the Buffalo Bills are for sale. Danger, you want to put in a bid here, bud?
You've got the NFL draft, the NBA playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Let's go! Isak Roseyan makes it back-to-back just like that, and the Amherst lead it once more. It's 3-2.
The Rochester Amherst clinched the 2 seed in the North Division. They'll be facing off against Syracuse in the best-of-5 series.
Amherst Crunch, Friday at 7. Game 1.
Playoffs?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, folks.
Ow! It really hit me. I didn't know it was coming back that far.
Scotty Scheffler, that's 4 victories in his last 5 starts and 10 over the last 26 months.
The Nighthawks also secured a spot in the NLL playoffs.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Happy hour in the sports bar, and we start with breaking news.
It really hit me. I didn't know it was coming back that far.
All right, Gino, you mentioned in your sports update, Elliot Friedman, Hockey Night in Canada, confirming Lindy Ruff will be the next head coach of the Buffalo Sabres.
Wow.
Adam Bonini also on the report.
I'm not going to move the goalpost, meaning change my opinion. But do you remember, Danger, the day he was relieved of his duties with the Devils, happened during live while we were on the air. And I said this when comparing Lindy Ruff to what we had in Buffalo. What did I say? I would take him back in the New York Mid.
Yeah.
Now, I said that back then, but then as you think about it a little bit more, you're going against history here, folks. Like, the 2.0 is going to be a challenge. Like, when does the coach coming back to the organization that you had all these good times? It didn't happen with Joe Gibbs. It doesn't happen a lot. Billy Martin, Phil Jackson, I suppose we could point it to. It very rarely does it happen. But I welcome this for this reason. Credibility. Like, Lindy wins. He won in Dallas. He got the Devils to a place where they were down and out, and then, it didn't go well this year. But you should be a little excited here, Danger, with Lindy Ruff coming
Here's
back.
what I'm bothered by. Did you really unearth the best candidate? We heard from Kevin Adams when? Wednesday last week? Less than a week? Less than a week.
Well, when Kevin Adams gave the press conference and we said, what? Like, he didn't say, we're going to talk to candidates, we're going to take our time and choose the best person. He said, we're going to get somebody from experience. Danger, was this already greased from the beginning?
Well, the other question I have is if you only wanted Lindy Ruff, if that was the only option for you, Lindy or nothing, and we know that Kevin Adams worked with Lindy Ruff. He was an assistant for Lindy Ruff, so there's a connection there. And as we know in professional sports, it's not always what you know, but who you know. And so that makes things a little bit easier. I don't want easy. I want a winner. I want somebody that's going to come in and give them what they promised us. Multiple Stanley Cups. I don't know that Lindy is that guy anymore. Yes, he has credibility. Yes, he has won everywhere he goes. But I just think because it took less than a week for them to get to this point, now I'm questioning, did you really talk to guys like Berube? Did you really talk to guys that have cups, that have won consistently in this league, aside from Lindy Ruff? What other candidates did you actually talk to? Was it a financial thing? Did a guy like Berube come at too hefty a price tag for you, too rich for your blood? We've heard Kevin Adams say, we try to make deals for free agents. We didn't like the terms. So, if you're an experienced head coach, Todd McClellan, whoever you wanted to talk to that could come in and have that experience, that history of winning on your resume, was it just that, if you want me to come to Buffalo, the terms are going to be this? Well, we can't afford that, or we're not going to pay you that.
Now, those are all fair questions. But for somebody like Lindy, who of all those candidates, who would understand like the culture, what he's kind of walking into? Like, Lindy Ruff has worked for Terry Pegula before. He knows the whole system here. And it's an attractive job. I know people don't want to think that. There's so much talent on this team that underachieved. They were screaming for a new head coach. And sometimes you go from the coach that was like this, we let that guy go, and you bring in the new head coach, and he's over here much different. And when you hear craving accountability, Lindy will keep you accountable, to the point where it was almost uncomfortable. And I don't know if you could do this today or not, Danger, and I don't know if he's kind of modified his style. He would call players out in press conferences. Like, Darlene would make mistakes, and you would have Granato going way out of his way to kind of cover up and say everything.
I wonder how much conversation was happening between Kevin Adams and Lindy Ruff from the time that Lindy Ruff was let go from the Devils to today's announcement. And the Sabres have made it official. They just released their tweet saying that they have hired Lindy Ruff as their head coach. The statement is out. So it moved quick. They've got the vacancy filled in less than a week. So I guess it lends me to wonder, because they have a relationship, how much time did Kevin Adams spend with Lindy Ruff from the moment that Ruff was let go by the Devils to today's announcement? And I suppose that there was probably some, reacquaintance, a little ignition of the relationship that two men have based on their time working together for the Sabres earlier.
Now, to bring this a little closer to home, I hate to say this, Seth Appert, I feel like he's going to get interviews. And I just pulled up, all right, there are a few interim jobs there. The Blues are in the playoffs. The Kings are in the playoffs. The Devils need a coach. Ottawa needs a coach. Ottawa. Like if you are a team that has young talent, but you're willing to give it a half second, what about Utah? They need a coach. Like, they would welcome anything coming out there as a new team. I'm just wondering how much longer Seth will be with the Amerks organization. We'll talk to Seth Appert tomorrow, and certainly he's got his eyes on something else here in the postseason.
Look, there's so many different elements of this fan base, and their reaction to this is going to be you're going to have every reaction on the spectrum from this is awesome, this is the guy that won with us before, he knows how to win, he's a proven winner. You're going to have guys that view this as, oh God, they went with a retread, just another coach that's just been everywhere, and there's a reason why we moved on from him, blah, 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 blah. Expect every reaction here, and ultimately we're going to have to wait until the fall to see what this product looks like with Lindy Ruff at the wheel. We know what it can look like. We've seen Lindy Ruff obviously have success in the past. Can he work with this group? The word we heard during last week's locker clean out and all the press conferences was accountability. Well, I think any of the coaches that you brought in, any of the veteran guys that you could have brought in, would have given you a new set of accountability. Whether you were talking about Berube or Lindy or McClellan or any of those guys. Seth Appert would have given you accountability, right? We know that he holds his guys accountable. We know the culture that he's built here. But you opted for, I want to say the path of least resistance, but it feels like a path of least resistance. It feels like an easy move.
It's a move that's going to get the fan base excited. That you can't deny that. And it's danger. He does bring this credibility. 864, 679, 78, and 153. That's his record. So he's got a winning record over 3 organizations. And he's been in the league. He didn't wash out when Buffalo let him go in 2013. He had some good times in Dallas, getting to the second round with the Stars, getting to the second round last year with the Devils, and then the Devils kind of punting on him this year. So he was out there. What I believe was that this was kind of probably figured out long ago. Like when you release a coach, how much time do you have to give it? A week? Well, that's where we are. It was like last week. Like, okay, they let go Don Granato.
And as they were leaving, as the press conference with Kevin Adams was winding down last week, you heard him say repeatedly, "I have a plan. I have a plan. I have a plan." He knew that this was the route he was going to go. So even if you did the legwork to talk to all the other veteran guys that are out there, guys with a lot of experience, guys with a lot of wins on their resume, guys with cups on their resume. Even if you talk to all of those guys, if you're Kevin Adams, you were probably smitten at the idea of Lindy Ruff being your next head coach once he became available and the Devils let go of him.
Yeah, and that alignment, like you said, actually matters, because if this doesn't work out, I don't know if Kevin Adams gets to pick a third guy.
You're absolutely right. This is it.
Yeah.
This is it. So if you can't make it work with your guy, good luck out there.
Yeah, this is also it for Lindy Ruff, who is 64.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to talk to Seth tomorrow, get his perspective on all this.
Danger for anybody that is like, oh, I don't know about Lindy Ruff. Okay, go home tonight and punch up Buffalo, Ottawa line fight.
Oh, yeah.
That like when Lindy wants to go with Brian Murray and climb the glass, okay? We've been missing this element from the team for how many years? So let us freaking have the moment, Danger.
But do you have that element of player, Gino? You could have that coach. That coach could have that fire, but do you have the player that has that fire as well?
He's going to demand it. And if you're going to be soft, you're out. So that has been the one thing that has been missing. Okay? The days of being coddled and making mistakes and everything. He's going to call you out.
It's always something, isn't it? Something's always missing. Last year was goaltending. Well, you got goaltending this year. You just didn't have anything else. I hope I'm wrong. Look, every Sabres fan that's excited about this, I'm not here to pee in your Cheerios.
I feel like you are.
No, I'm really not. I don't like path of least resistance move. I struggle with the idea that of all the available candidates out there, this guy was the best guy. Now, because of the relationship, because there's alignment, maybe it is. Maybe it is the best guy. Maybe you didn't have to convince Terry Pegula that hard that bringing back Lindy Ruff was a good idea.
Okay, let's compare then Lindy Ruff to all these other hires there between the craphead Kruger to, I'll even say Ted Nolan 2.0. Okay, that didn't work out, obviously. To Housley, to the one guy, Rollison. Do you remember that guy? Like, all these guys pale in comparison to Lindy Ruff. How could you say that about Ted Nolan? He was the coach there. Lindy Ruff came in and took the Sabres to a place beyond Ted Nolan.
Yeah.
They were a circus back then. So he's been in the league that long. And the fact, Danger, that he got New Jersey, a young team, just like Buffalo, well, not only did he get him to the playoffs, he got him to win a series last year, tells me, okay, maybe he can work with the younger guys this other generation too.
That's the hope. I'm going to go back to, and we'll take a break. When we take a break, I'll dig up what we talked to Paul Hamilton about as well. Because I was like you, and I think like a lot of people, after that press conference, in my head, I was like, it's Lindy. Lindy Ruff's going to be the guy. They're going to bring back Lindy Ruff. Lindy Ruff is the guy that not only can win you games, but can also recharge and re-energize a fan base. And my fear is that the fan base is so apathetic at this point that even a guy like Lindy Ruff.
No, this is like throwback uniforms, only better. Like, Lindy's going to get up there, and he's going to hit all the right notes.
Well, based on what I said earlier today, can we stop with the throwback uniforms now? Because it's just a distraction for bad teams.
Well, how many times have the Sabres said, like, hey, we gave you royal blue. I mean, that's not what you wanted.
Yeah. No, it's a thing that loser organizations do. Just change up the uniform. Distraction. Forget about the product.
Dude, I am excited. Okay, so let Sabre fans have this moment. There hasn't been anything in the past 13 years you could say, this is ours here. And having Lindy here actually gets me excited for October.
I'm glad everybody's excited. I am less enthusiastic. But of course, we will see. We will see how it all goes. I'm not a fan of path of least resistance, and this feels very path of least resistance. Very path of least resistance.
Who made the decision? Was it Adams running it by Pegula, or Pegula like, I might have made a mistake there when I let him go?
Yeah, right. And I think that's the thing, right? Like, Pegula's got to ultimately sign off on it, and that's an easy sell to Pegula because it would re-energize the fan base. We'll get more people in the barn. More people will come out at the start of the season knowing that we've got this guy. I would have been excited about a Berube. I think he would have given you a lot. He's a little bit younger, and he's got a cup on his resume. That would have been the guy I would have honed in on. And maybe they did. And maybe in doing that, the terms weren't right. Or they couldn't justify paying him what he would want to come to Buffalo. So you go with the guy who's familiar with the organization, who's familiar with the market, who has familiarity with the ownership, and certainly has familiarity with the general manager. So in that regard, if you have that alignment, Great. Now you have, if you're Terry Pagula, you look at this and you're like, hey, look at how we built the Bills. We've got alignment from owner to GM to head coach to quarterback. Can we get the same thing with the Buffalo Sabres?
Yeah.
And if this is the move that gets you there, then you should be excited about it. I'm wondering who the quarterback is that you're looking for alignment. Is it Darlene? Who is that guy?
Okay, here's all I need, Danger. Like last year was what, 1 or 2 freaking points. I'd like to swear here because you got me blood boiling here. That's all you would need, right?
Yeah.
That's all you would need. Just get into the darn thing. 7, 8, 6 seeds. They win in advance all the time. We love the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's unbelievable. Yeah, you know why it's unbelievable? Because it's hockey. It's hockey. Your best player maybe is on the ice 30% of the time. Coaching does matter. And all he has to do, Danger, is get this team to the postseason, and we'll see where it goes from there. Just get us to the postseason. It's not a ridiculous ask, is it?
It's not. Not in the NHL.
No.
It really isn't. I mean, you really have to screw it up badly to miss as much as the Sabres have missed. It's defying. It's record breaking. It's you shouldn't have this kind of ineptitude in the NHL. And if Lindy is that steadying hand, and if he does provide organizational alignment and gets you closer to that, then this is a good hire. I'm just a little surprised. I guess I'm a little surprised that it happened as quickly as it happened. But I shouldn't be surprised because, well, it's like I say, it's not always what you know, but who you know. Man, the Sabres are putting out the Lindy Ruff highlight reel. They were ready for this, man. They've been working on this. The highlight reel is out with Lindy from his time with the Sabres originally.
Oh, and right. It just kind of goes to say, like, all right, guys, we're working on this. Everybody keep your mouth shut. Danger, they knew when the team is flying back from Dallas, last regular season game from Buffalo. No, it wasn't Dallas. Forgive me. It was Tampa. They're flying back from Tampa, last regular season game. Lindy Ruff's already hired at that point, right?
I think Lindy Ruff is hired the moment he gets let go by the Devils. I wonder if Adams at that moment said, you know what, that's the guy. That's the guy, because they've worked together. They've been behind the bench together. And Granato's nice. Everybody loves Granato, and Granato and Adams have a great relationship. But that's the guy you want. And in Kevin Adams' eyes, Lindy Ruff probably can do no wrong, right? You don't have to meddle. You don't have to get involved. You could ask Lindy his opinion. He's going to give it to you. There's no hiding. There's no. It's everything is above board. Again, just for the sake, I'm convincing myself that this is a good hire. For the sake of organizational alignment alone, it's a good hire.
It's bringing you the qualities in the coach that you didn't have before. And I feel like I'm slamming Don Granato with that, but Don Granato, learn, develop, blah, blah, blah. That time's over, okay? You heard Paul Hamilton with us last week. This team isn't a young team. Actually, it was Adam's quote who said that. Time to stop making that excuse.
Right.
It's over with that excuse. It's go time.
If you're just joining us, the breaking news just announced by the Buffalo Sabres less than 20 minutes ago. Lindy Ruff, new head coach, Buffalo Sabres. What is old is new again.
And again, I understand. I'm getting all excited, but I know this doesn't happen too often. And I'm putting it out there for somebody to tell me, okay, Phil Jackson being the last guy at 2.0.
Yeah, you can't compare Phil Jackson to Lindy Ruff.
No, it didn't work out with Ted Nolan. Remember, he came back. We kind of forget that he came back to Buffalo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Add it to the list.
Yeah. Art Shell with the Raiders. Joe Gibbs with the Washington football team.
I don't know, man. We'll marinate in here a little bit, but the initial reaction is going to be positive, and it's going to excite and energize a lot of fans.
Oh, I'm looking at my feed here. Everybody's excited about this.
Yeah. It's going to excite a lot of people. I'm going to pull up what we talked to Paul Hamilton about last week when we discussed the head coaching opportunity that was available for the Buffalo Sabres. We'll get into that next, along with a round of shots in the sports bar, Gino.
Yeah, we had a weekend, remember, for our locals, the Amherst, the Nighthawks. We'll set you up for the NBA, NHL playoffs tonight as well. How big is Caitlin Clark? This would go to your argument. Did people tune in for the for the college basketball on the women's side, or did they tune in for Caitlin Clark? There's just some numbers here that are unbelievable. And we'll check in on the Olympics in France, see how they're. Oh, not so good when you hear this story.
We'll get into that and more next. A round of shots on the way. You're on the Fan Rochester.
You're listening to the Sports Bar with Danger and Rochester's home for live sports and the best sports talk anywhere. The Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
I'm not a real fan of this thing in Buffalo that we keep doing, that all we want to do is bring back old Sabres.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember how many players or coaches at Buffalo Sabres have won a Stanley Cup, but yet we want to keep bringing them all back. We wanted to bring Miller back, when he was near the end of his career. We want to bring everybody back. What about Vanek? Let's bring him back, and, the whole thing. And it's just, maybe we could also try something new.
That was Paul Hamilton. He joined us, what was that, Wednesday last week?
Yeah. Things move fast.
Yeah. Wasn't crazy about the idea of the Sabres bringing back Lindy Ruff when we brought it up to him last week. Lindy Ruff, your new Buffalo Sabres head coach.
Yeah, I mean, he's bringing the players. I mean, you could say it didn't work out with Ted Nolan. When you brought back LaFontaine, that was very short-lived. And I would just say this, I'd listen to Berube, I would listen to that, but between the alignment, check. The fan base, check. Guy who's going to give you the things that Don Granato did. It's not a slam against Don Granato. Check.
It's just not what Don Granato is. It's not his style. Right.
No. So, you want hey, you're craving accountability? Congratulations. Welcome to your new head coach, Lindy Ruff, back in Buffalo.
All right, let's get to a round of shots in the sports bar.
Yeah, the Amerks get it done over the weekend. They came this close, Danger, to winning the division. Cleveland won in overtime here on Friday. That was the difference. The Monsters got 6 of 6 points this weekend. That got them to first place. The Amerks taking down Utica Sunday. Amerks actually down 2-1 entering the third. Ethan Prowley, Isak Rosane scoring 30 seconds apart. Rochester getting the 3-2 win, locking up second place, and the home ice that comes with this round. So the schedule looks like this. Games 1 and 2 Friday and Sunday 3:05 at here. Games 3 and 4 in Syracuse Thursday, May 1st and Saturday, May 4th. If needed, a Game 5 would be in the Flower City Friday, May 10th.
Yeah.
So tally it up. That's 5 games, a 5-game series stretched out over 15 days.
That's a lot.
Head coach Seth Thapper joins us tomorrow on the Sports Bar at 4:25.
Do you think we get a rant out of Seth if we bring that up to him? What's up with a 5-game series taking 15 days?
It was the same way last year.
I know.
Yeah.
It's got to change. What are they doing?
It's arena availability or selling tickets, or I don't know what the reason is.
It makes 0 sense.
Yeah.
0 sense at all. Hopefully it doesn't go 5. But we know how these two teams are, and when they get together, it's evenly matched.
That's why I want to say this team is so much better than last year, and then you say, well, ... hockey.
Yeah.
And we could be looking at a 5-game and just sick to our stomach. Boy, I do like that sick to your stomach sort of feeling when it comes to playoff hockey.
Barf, cry, and die is what I call it.
Yeah, missed it when we were with the Sabres. Entering the weekend, the Rochester Nighthawks had just a 3% chance of making the postseason. For crying out loud, Friday we're talking about these rumors, right, about the team not being here, all right now turning out not to be true. Well, for the Nighthawks, everything did go right. Connor Fields had 16 points and 2 wins Friday at Georgia, Sunday at home against Philadelphia. The big difference here for Rochester being Ryan Hartley is back, the goaltender. Just fantastic. Sunday's final was 12-3. In the history of the NLL, Hartley is just the 9th goaltender to allow
9 times
3 or fewer goals in a game. Either that or Philadelphia was just mailing it in.
Well, I got to tell you, man, I watched a little bit on Friday. The comeback in Georgia, it was nice. And when you saw everything, all the boxes that needed to be checked for the Nighthawks to clinch that playoff berth, I was skeptical. I'm like, well, if they win against Philly on Sunday, that would be great. I'm sure the barn will be rocking. The fact that you even have a chance come Sunday afternoon would be a lot. And by the time Sunday afternoon, this is the final game of the regular season in the NLL. For them to get that win, pretty spectacular, coming back from a 3% chance of making the postseason.
There are 3 playoff games tonight in the NBA. TNT has the doubleheader with the Knicks looking to go up 2-0 on Philadelphia. That's at 7:30, followed by the Lakers and Nuggets. Denver up 1-0. Series tonight that's been banished to NBA TV is Orlando and Cleveland. The Cavs up 1-0 as well. All the home teams won.
I like the under in Orlando, Cleveland. Give me the Knicks to go up 2-0. I got the Knicks on the point spread, and I think it's a big Jokic game tonight. I think Jokic continues to just impose his will.
Yeah, Yeah, that's the late one tonight, Lakers and Denver. 3 games in the NBA tonight, 4 in the NHL, and good on the NHL for staggering the start times. They did this last year. I'm glad they stuck with it. So, hey, end of the first period, let's go to the other game. All these games on ESPN or ESPN2 tonight. Toronto and Boston at 7, Bruins up 1-0. 7:30 Carolina against the Islanders, Canes up 1-0. And then a pair of game ones out west, Vegas and Dallas at 9:30. And for the third straight year in round 1, we get the LA Kings facing Edmonton.
I like the Oilers on the puck line. I think the Oilers handle the Kings handily, and I'll go with the Stars. I feel like this postseason, I know a lot of these series haven't even started yet, but it feels chalky to me. It feels like these series could be a little chalky this year, the postseason. The haves are far greater than the have-nots.
Yeah, well, it looked that way last year, and listen, whoa, Boston's out here.
Yeah.
How big is Caitlin Clark right now? Dick Hoops Weiss, New York Post, reporting that Clark has sold more jerseys in 1 week than the entire Dallas Cowboys roster last season combined.
Did anybody fact check that or put numbers to that? I'm curious. That's a big claim, and I don't know that that's accurate.
Well, it's Dick Weiss, though. So he is one of the longtime college basketball writers. So this isn't some guy that's that guy. If he fabricated that, I would be surprised. But I'm also surprised that we haven't seen that reported.
I would like the numbers. I would like the numbers behind that claim.
Well, while that sounds great, all these numbers, this is what might be lending to this danger. Fanatics has a problem on their hands. Fulfillment. If you're ordering online right now, you're being told to expect delivery in August at the earliest for a Caitlin Clark jersey. Speaking in August, that's when we'll have the Summer Olympics. And Paris has a little bit of a problem now, too. As you may have heard, the opening ceremony is going to be down the Seine River, right? It's going to look a little dirty. Well, turns out the river is dirty.
No.
We're not talking about mud here. E. coli we're talking about. The river is scheduled to also be used for swimming in the portion of the triathlon. And right now,
fun.
That is a big time question. Recent tests show pollution from E. coli 2.5 times the limit.
Yuck.
Speaking of fecal matter, about the Olympics, and I like to pass along quotes every once in a while to watch Danger's head explode. Bob Costas was asked if he misses working the Olympics. Costas, quote, "I don't miss covering the Olympics, but that is because I covered a dozen of them."
Well, it's nice of him to join the peasantry down here from high atop Mount Pius to remind us how many Olympics he went to. What a jackass. Is there a guy that you can relate less to than Bob Costas? Name dropping. I'm big time Bob Costas. I've been to 12 Olympics. No, I don't miss going to them. Instead of, God, what a privilege it was to be at 12 Olympics. God, that was awesome.
Yeah, for what Costas, and I'm gonna admit, I had the chance to meet him at a Ken Kaiser banquet when I was a kid. Always kind of looked up to him, big time baseball. But where Costas kind of jumped the shark was NBC would give him the halftime commentary.
NFL.
Yeah.
I remember.
And he would wave his finger and just kind of dump on the product I'm enjoying watching.
Right. That's right.
And well, it didn't take long for the NFL to say, hey, get this guy off
He's
here.
a sanctimonious jerk. Just and that was his opportunity to show his true colors. That's all I needed to see. And I know we have people who view him as an idol because he's Syracuse and he's a picture of what.
He didn't graduate from Syracuse. He left Syracuse.
Right, but he's a product of, he's what we could all aspire to be. And, look, as a broadcaster, he's unbelievable. Call a great game. Whether you're talking basketball, baseball, whatever you want him to call, he's going to call a great game. He's a good host. But the person, just based on the little glimpses we get, including this quote, "I don't miss them. I don't miss covering the Olympics. That's because I covered a dozen of them." How about this? How about, man, what a privilege it was for me to be at the Olympics 12 different times. Do I miss it? There are elements of it that were taxing and strenuous, but man, yes, I miss it because it was an unbelievable opportunity.
And Mike Tirico is great, and he's going to do a great job as he always does.
Right. No. Hold on a second. You're bothering me. I've got to come down from Mount Pius to answer your question. Of course I don't miss covering them. I went to 12 of them, peasant. Now I'm going to go high atop Mount Pius once again, where I will reside until you call again. Yeah, I can do without Bob Costas. Ever.
Funny, I'm just kind of reading this breaking news story here. I don't know if this is breaking or not, Danger. You're closer to the Bears, but the Bears apparently are going to hold a press conference the day before the draft where they're going to announce their state-of-the-art, publicly owned, enclosed stadium somewhere on the museum campus, lakefront, blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
Is this news to you? Or
No, I mean, look, what's news to me is that they're actually going to make an announcement. You brought in Kevin Warren for this purpose. The only reason why he's there, I mean, he's got weight, he's got clout, he's a leader for certain, but his specialty is this: get us a deal to get a new stadium. And it didn't work in Arlington because the numbers didn't look well, or the assessment didn't work in their favor. And we know enough now about how the NFL does their operation and does their business to know, like, I'm sure that there's a lot of money, a lot of public money behind this new project. The location is great. Where they're talking about putting it, that sounds wonderful.
Well, apparently, according to this report I'm reading from Florio, there will be city officials on board with this. But again, the politics out there, I don't know. Do they need the state dollars to come in? Who knows? I guess we'll all learn about that on Wednesday. But if you want to talk to a fan base, then when they're excited, when you're drafting your future franchise quarterback the next day, here's the stadium he'll be playing in.
And when did the Buffalo Bills start talking about a stadium?
When we figured out Josh Allen was the guy.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You're not talking about that when your team continues to lose year in and year out, when you're in the middle of a playoff drought. You're talking about it when you realize, okay, everybody loves this guy. Yeah, we haven't won the Super Bowl, but we've won enough. We have enough that we can get you excited. Now, are you excited to the point where you're going to spend $15,000 for a PSL? Well, that's the ask. And the same will happen in Chicago or any other market that houses an NFL team looking to build a new stadium. The cycle continues. And that's Kevin Warren's specialty. So none of that surprises me. The timing of it doesn't surprise me. The location surprises me a little bit. That's not far from where they already are. But I'm sure Chicago as a city is saying, why is Indianapolis getting all of these great things? We're Chicago. That's Indianapolis, man.
Yeah.
Not anymore. They build what they're proposing. That'll be massive. Last call is next. We have time for your calls. You can join us, 866-4FAN, 866-4326.
You're listening to the 7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Now, you're right, Gino. As we were wrapping up a round of shots, you brought up something to make my head explode. That Costas quote is the worst.
I've covered a dozen of them.
What a
Here's
jerk.
my resume.
Yeah, you know what? We might be the only people on this platform that will say things like that. That'll, like call it like we see it. Like Costas just comes off like an arrogant douche most of the time. Call a game. Really, really good at calling a game. But man, the end of his time at NBC when he was getting that little editorial portion there.
Yeah, sanctimonious.
He was very sanctimonious. Last call at 866-4FAN, 585-866-4326.
Yeah, first stop, Pittsburgh. Brian, he's got a Costas story to share. Brian, what's going on, buddy?
Yeah, hey, guys, thanks for having me on. I got a couple of Costas quotes. I mean, I haven't heard you talk about him doing the Olympics with pink eye.
All right.
For an entire fucking week. Oh, excuse me. My bad. You have to bleep that out. But,
yeah, go ahead.
Man, an entire week, and you're there with doctors and medics from all around the world, and that thing just kept getting worse all week. So man, that was crazy. Him covering the Olympics, but I got to tell you a story. I saw him down at Belmont Park. It was the Belmont race, right? California Chrome is racing, and he's announcing the race and everything. He's down near the racetrack. And I'm standing there with a buddy of mine, and we're all cheering Costas, Costas, Costas. Well, 25-ounce Mick Ultra goes flying in his head. He catches it out of nowhere like the Matrix, opens it, and chugs the whole thing.
All right.
Oh, all right.
All right.
I got some mixed feelings about the Bob Costas thing.
That story I can get down with. If you have that sixth sense where you're plucking a 12-ounce can out of midair and then chugging it down because you're part of the party, that I can get down with. It's the sanctimonious part of it that, come on.
And the pink eye for a week.
The pink eye for a week.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, appreciate it, Brian. And don't worry. We that's why we have a dump button. If you're listening on the stream, you got a nice little treat there.
Is the FCC ding us on the stream?
No,
all
we're
right,
okay.
We're okay.
We're
like
good.
when you call in at 866-4326, just remember, don't swear. Look, you slipped up one time.
It happens.
I slipped
I'm
up
surprised
one time
I've only
on the
done
air,
it
too.
once.
Yeah.
Once? That's it? Just once? It's pretty good for me. We've got a great show lined up for you tomorrow afternoon. Tuesdays are always special in the sports bar. We get to talk to Amerks head coach Seth Appert. And now that we know that the Buffalo Sabres will be hiring Lindy Ruff again as their new head coach, I'm sure Seth Appert has some thoughts on that. But more importantly, Amerks are playoff bound, baby.
Yeah. We'll talk to Seth tomorrow, Matt Perino for his normal Tuesday set. And we welcome in on draft week for the first time, Agent Lee Steinberg.
Crazy.
Yeah, right?
We're talking to Lee Steinberg tomorrow afternoon.
Unless Costas calls him up and says, no, not go on the show.
So that'll be just after 4 o'clock tomorrow. So Perino at 3:25 normal time. Lee Steinberg calling in at 4:05, and then we'll talk to Amerks head coach Seth Appert at our usual Tuesday afternoon 4:25 time window there tomorrow afternoon in the sports bar. Now today, if you missed any of the show, Chris Trapasso, CBS Sports draft analyst, 13 Wham sports director, BuffaloPlus.com's Mike Catalana talked a lot of NFL draft. And both conversations are available for you now wherever you get your podcasts. Just search us out. You'll find the Fan Rochester in the free-to-download Odyssey app, and you'll find our show, The Sports Bar, wherever you find your podcast, wherever you enjoy your podcast. Just search out The Sports Bar. So thanks for stopping by the video stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/TheFanRochester. And don't forget to like and subscribe and click that little bell for notifications on our YouTube channel at The Fan Rochester as well. Gino, have a great night. Look, man, we're one day closer to Thursday, buddy. NFL Draft, Three Heads Brewing. Can't wait for that. It's all on the way. JR Sport Brief on the way next. Rochester sports leader, The Fan Rochester.